Plus, Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, Friday Night Gnostic Mass, Hyperspatial Distortion, Arc Null. I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints, which you can find on Apple and Spotify. Of course, this is The Grey Lodge, which doesn't happen without the 4 to 5 pillars of the brothers, of course. So, I'll introduce Matt first and then let him introduce himself. So Matt Murrah is our incredible webmaster, a video, social media designer, uploader, everything. He does everything. And he also has his own site and his own content that he does, and we're so proud of him. And he's been making big waves, and I'm really proud of you, Matt. And so make sure you check his bio out. It has his website, Kabbalah.com. And Matt also, of course, built our Grey Lodge website, thetruegraylodge.com, TRVE, graylodge.com. You can check out all of our episodes and all the episodes from Threshold Saints with that the brothers have appeared on. And the brothers in mention, of course, Solar Exile, our contemporary left-hand path, Zog Chinbro, Joshua the Branch. I have been crediting Joshua as the Branch on the posters for quite some time, but I realized that perhaps I should probably call it Joshua the Branch, but I thought it looked keynote as fuck, so sorry, Josh. I'll do it next week, though. And of course, Mike. Mike is our finance and markets and art guy, and we appreciate him. And of course, Joshua is our fellow Kabbalah brother. Bible and biblical and just Judaic expert. And hey, Vanessa, what's up? Anyways, so we have that, and of course, what else? Oh, so we are what are we, Matt? We are a metamagical society. We're a metamagical society that is inspired, but not directly lifting from the Temple of Psychic Youth, but not really. We're just using conceptual ideas, and we talk about speculative ontology, speculative Kabbalah, speculative Kalachakra, and of course, speculative fucking Gnosticism. And so we do that every Friday night, pretty much on X and YouTube. Of course, if you're interested in the work we are doing, well, there's lots more to come. We've got big dreams and big plans. So anyways, I'll let and then of course we have our people that come, which is called the Grey Lodge, which is a group chat, but it's extended far beyond that. And it is a kind of way of aeonic thinking that helps us move through both the timeline and real life, which is also at least partly or majority arising in your own mind. So I think that's a big part of our space and a big part of our kind of aeonic ideas. So what else? So we come in consent. We are on the app called X, the 10 and the 11, transcending both space and time, being directly into your mind, and your mind is made of diamond thunder. So of course, as we begin, we cast all obstacles out into space. Pay. There you go. So I'll let Matt introduce himself, and then we'll get started. Okay, Matt, you give your whole spiel, whatever you want to plug, buddy. You plug.
Amazing stuff. Thanks, Vanessa, for already coming out. I'm Matt Mora. Thanks, Jin, also for the very nice intro. Let's rock it tonight. Matt Mora 19 on all social medias. That's X, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Maybe some other place, I don't remember. All of them. You can also check out my website, like Jin said. That's Kabbalah.com, KAABALAH.com. And also our website, The True Grey Lodge with a V, so truth.com as well, as always. And very nice stuff. Also, some podcasts coming up. We have, I guess, one tomorrow, right, Jin, with David Rankine. It's going to be super fun. We had one with PD also this week on Occult Rejects. Both are going to be really cool stuff, really nice. And yeah, let's rock it. Really excited for today.
I totally forgot about David Rankin, or I didn't forget, but I pushed it down. And then, because I had been sort of anticipating / nervous all week for it. Yes, Matt, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, one thing I forgot to mention, there is, like you said, a lot of stuff coming up. Also, I'm going to add some more stuff for the website and start improving the type of things that we can do there regarding the apps. And I guess I'll give some more time also for service providing, because it was very cool last few weeks. I happened to give some readings and remember why I like giving those. It's always super nice and fun. And yeah, definitely working out and improving that. So be sure to follow so you don't lose all the stuff.
Also, Matt, don't forget to plug your Ko-Fi. Very important. Matt has a Ko-Fi, so if you have a mini question, make sure you give him a little tip on the Ko-Fi. And if you DM him, I'm not saying that you have to pay for every DM. I don't know how Matt does it, but Matt can decide, and he's a good Kabbalah. He's a very good Kabbalist. He can put his own boundaries in place. But I'm just saying, if you do have a Kabbalah question and it takes a little more extensive offering from Matt, and perhaps like consider doing that. Okay. Of course, we try and take care of all of our brothers in that way. Make sure that all their work gets promoted. Hello, Mike. So you did get an intro, but I want you to introduce yourself and also say what you're about. And just I want to tell you that I really appreciate that you have been coming so much, and also just like your presence on the timeline and in the chat, because of course it doesn't happen without four or five of us, and everyone else who joins us, Matt, Monty, not Matt. I'm sorry, Matt. Seth, Monty, and whom else? Oh, Leo and Moonblade. So we do have some kind of junior members, or like kind of like people who are like coming in and out of the spaces, and we love when they come up. But Mike has been a stalwart for like at least 4 months now, and I have to say that I really enjoy him as a person, and he's very kind to me. I don't know about everyone else, but he's really nice to me. So, and I think everyone else likes Mike as well, because he is very mild and polite. So, thank you, Mike, and please introduce yourself. I know you'll say you don't have that much to plug, but I think that the NFT stuff's really interesting. I don't really get it, but please explain it if you want, and tell us about who you are.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jen. That was a really wonderful introduction, and the feelings are mutual. I am very grateful to be a part of the space, and I love talking about all this stuff, essentially just shooting the shit with you guys, and I'm glad to be here. And just a great introduction. And with just my stuff, I feel like it's always hard to plug what I'm doing, because it's kind of all over the place, and it's kind of like a little bit esoteric even within this domain with NFT stuff. So NFT has a really bad has a lot of negative connotations around it, and obviously because last market cycle NFTs went really crazy, and there was a lot of scams, and a lot of things lost nearly all of their value, and they have become associated with scams. So I, with a lot of the things that I do, it's connected to the digital art world, because I collect digital art, and this is one of the things that I am passionate about, is just being um, collecting art, and doing things in the art world, and NFTs are just the evolution of it's a new medium for art. It's really that simple. It's just a way to monetize digital works of art. So I have been sharing some of the stuff that I've been collecting. I haven't been collecting as much as I used to in the past. I used to collect a lot. Um, but it's more mild, but there's been some interesting things happening in the space, and I've been sharing a little bit more about it, just like what I've been collecting. But that's it for now. But eh, the other things I do is just the esoteric things I study, and I try to use that in tandem with all the other things I do, um, to make better decisions in my life, and to time the market and other things. And I like to use it to help people out as well when they need help. So that's it.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, Mike. That's kind of why I like you and why I brought you in, because I was like, yeah, this is like, we all share the ethos. Is like, that's what the Aeon is supposed to be. That's what the Aeonic ideals are supposed to be, right? Like, it's supposed to be love. So there's many spectrums of that. There's life, which is like helping people to live their best life, which obviously you and Matt do. And then there's also will. So it's like, how do you get there, right? Push yourself through the emptiness, the empty spaces. So, and I think we're all like that, you know. So anyone has a book, that comes out with a book, you'll have a guaranteed at least one sale in solar. And you ever need, it's true. And if you ever um, need a dad joke or someone to listen to your grievances, he might not respond. He'll read it. He'll leave you on unseen. Joshua is like a perfect unk in that way. He really is a grandpa, and he has the best dad jokes, and he knows tons of strains of weed, and he knows a lot about guns as well, which I don't really know anything about. So it's always fun to ask him about those things. So yeah, everybody has their, we're weird quirk chunguses. I don't know what to say, but esoteric ones, right? So it's all good. We try and use our meta Kabbalah to influence and also influence and understand the timeline, and sort of like also deconstruct. So we're doing very like high level Binah Hokmah relations, as I always have joked, or at least many times have joked, because we also deconstruct like the bullshit, which is a very Hokmah thing to do. And also we try and understand it as it arises, which is a very Binah thing to do. And maybe we do it from the ghost world. Maybe that's what social media is, as I've often posited, as we've often posited. Social media is the carnal ground. Social media is the ghost worlds. But there is a way to sort of take control of it. And as Matt would always say, you need to curate your fucking timeline. And it's very interesting, Mike, that you do the NFTs and showing them, because in a way, that is curation of the timeline. Because as we always say, like, Metamagic, and there's no more Metamagic than a meme. And not that NFTs are exactly a meme, but they contain information, colors, ideas, all of those things that make make Kabbalah great. So of course, and make magic great. So I think that's a really interesting way to sort of like curate the digital archive, because that's what this whole show is. Like, that's what the Grey Lodge is. It's not monetized. It's not about like, yeah, of course, if like we got like 50,000 views on YouTube, I'd probably like lay in the forest. Sometimes, I take pictures from the forest, or like the pasture maybe, and I would just like be like, take me now, because I'd be so happy. But then I'd also be freaking out, as both of you know, as all of you really know, because I'm not really neurotic, but I probably would be like quite overwhelmed and like a little bit of a handful for a few days. Then Matt would say some wise words, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I love it. Love being internet famous. Yeah, that's basically how it's gonna go probably. But hopes and prayers. Of course, we are joined by Vanessa Truth and Dies, who is I would say my longtime mutual now. I know she probably would say she's not, but I think I can't really remember a time where she wasn't. So everybody check out Vanessa on Etsy and on IG, which is really where her sort of brand and her wares live. I would say IG and Etsy. So everybody check that out. And she has anything tie-dye you want, she's got it, all the colors. And she's actually a very diligent student of Kabbalah. I know she's always impressed when Matt and I do our little things, and Joshua, of course. But she's mentioned our episodes, Matt, a couple times. So I just want to give props to that. But of course, Joshua's he's the Trinitarian, like the tripartite part of those. And then we have my newer mutual, Trinerist. I still don't really know what that means, but we'll just we'll say hey in good faith. I think it might be a drug reference. I don't know. This is what someone may have said, but I don't know. So we'll just go with that. I'm very, I'm a ghost boy. I'm like off in my own world. So we'll just say that. So what's up? And thank you so much for coming. So I did title it Hyperspatial Distortion, and we did bring up the idea of curation. So I think that's actually, as Matt would always say, like we kind of both let the keynote and the timeline sort of inform, not dictate what we're going to discuss. But maybe we also sort of draw ideas. I also draw ideas from like everything that you guys say. So I love that idea of the curation of the archive, because that's what this space is. It's our curation of the timeline, but also our metamagical ideas, which actually I think are important, and I think it's been an important thing to document. I know I'm kind of self-aggrandizing, which I always do on the spaces, which I have no shame when it comes to like self-promotion or saying like I'm smart, or Matt's really smart, or Mike's really smart, or Solar's really, really smart, scary smart. And but so I have no shame in that. But I don't think we should. And to be honest, I'm not trying to be like, we talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago, like the Canadian politeness. I'm not trying to do that. I know I'm smart. And I think that everything that we've come up with together collectively is really clever too. So I'm really proud that I can call you guys like my friends, and that we do this. So back to the idea of the archive. So we've done this whole kind of metamagical archive now that Matt has very kindly categorized, cataloged, and uploaded to YouTube. And it shows sort of like the different waves that we have, quote unquote, Quicksilver surfed. And I think that's really interesting too, because it is kind of like a history of Twitter, but then also our reactions to it in the fire of perception. Pretty cool. It's like, it is really like surfing, because if you think about surfing, you'll see, like when I post the keynote of surfing, you'll see kind of as the surfer's on it, and the surfer doesn't look. Usually they're not looking at the water, so you don't get water blindness, which is smart, obviously. They're looking ahead, they're looking forward. It's not about progressivism, but it's about knowing, or at least feeling, or flowing, I think, as some would say. Flowing, feeling that kind of vibe, that yesodic kind of foundation of where you're going. Or at least having the balance. The balance, as we often talk about synthesis and rectification. It's about having that balance to be able to go to where you want to go, but also be able to navigate the wave as it arises. Hello, Avi. Welcome to Kini of the Lodge. Thank you so much. Everybody check out Avi's pin tweet, which is her yoga, and her second account that has all of her offerings and services. And of course, we appreciate her for coming to this space, which happens in synthesis and consent. Of course, both of those things. I hear you, Avi. I heard you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. But the online curation. So this is what I kind of had in mind to discuss, was the way that people talk about the timeline. They'll say, "Oh, the algorithm is so bad. It's so bad. I'm leaving X. I'm leaving this. You know what? I will honestly say the algorithm is much better than a week ago. I don't know if that's like a huge improvement, but it's a huge improvement from last week. So let's just take it as it is. Let's flow with the wave. It is much improved from last week. And although, yes, my reach is very stifled at the moment, I'm not sure, probably some, commentary I made. But anyways, Matt, please go ahead.
The last thing you mentioned was funny, but I was thinking about something. There's a lot of prevent brain rot apps now, right? Things that try to make you like not be in the algorithm, not be brain rotting, whatever the thing they want to name it. But I was thinking about it. When things like Kabbalah and whatever other system you may use, the algorithm then becomes just like the sea of opportunities. Like that's how it works when you know what you're doing. Each post, it's either something you can learn from and see, okay, this is doing good or bad. Like even if you don't agree with necessarily the content of the post, you can understand it. Or it's actually some synchronicity happening as well. It like countless times I was working in some project, and then, or whatever, like, it doesn't have to be a money related project, but I was working on something, and then out of nowhere I find exactly what I need from some social media. Can be Twitter, can be Instagram, doesn't really matter. And it seems random, right? Quote unquote random, but it's not, because again, you are in control of the thing. You are in control of the algorithm. I think YouTube recently has been the most volatile, in the sense of, if, let's say, in 2 weeks I'm in more of a business sense, and like my For You page, my like first page there on YouTube is going to be full of videos about that, and so on and so on. And if I change it, it adapts so quickly. Like if I change to do something else, I don't know, now I'm more into some Kabbalah stuff, then it's going to change basically automatically, and I'm almost never going to see business stuff again. So it's very like narrow, and I think that's interesting. Like, it's on X, it seems like even if I'm super focused on something, I'll still from time to time see some other things, which is cool as well. But again, then each platform will kind of have its different type of algorithm and egregore that it wants to create. But then if you understand that, and then that was the thought that I had, why not make the people how to understand those kind of things, so that they are not brain rotting? Like, that's the thing. Then you can use however much time you want to use the thing for, and you're not going to brain rot, because you are actively using it. You're actively doing something with the thing. Like, even if you're spending 4 hours a day or whatever into like each of the social medias, you're doing something out of this. You're not just consuming. So I don't know. I think it was interesting to think from this other point of view, and I had this insight, I think, today even.
That was great. All great points, Matt. Totally agree. I think this is something interesting that has happened to me. Sometimes I have noticed, I don't know if this is like I don't know if people are just on the same vibe as me, or like I don't know if if they are perceiving like subtext or like hidden things, but there are several accounts that follow me that sort of mimic. I'm using a nice word, a mimic the Kabbalah I use in my PFP and my banner, which does often frequent. Well, all of you know that I change it pretty much every like 3 or 4 days. It's not to be like weird. It's just because I get bored of it, and then also like why be stagnant in the colors I'm using? Even if I change to the same color, like I love Bina and Hesed, but I might change to a different relationship of them or a different density of them. And like maybe I'll change to more suit the astrology, or maybe I'll change to more suit like what I'm feeling at that moment, like more vibe based. I think both ways are valid. It's not a perfect map. Perhaps maybe you should be more defensive. I think Matt would make a good argument for that. I also would personally, as in for like you guys, but for me, I kind of take it more as like, okay, I'm going to access this idea. I'm going to go this conceptual way of thinking. It's not necessarily in opposition to the astrology, and it's not necessarily in complement to it either. I kind of just do my own thing. That's kind of how I am as a magician and as a person, as you all know. But I also think that the higher Sephra, that's why I like those colors often, is I think that because they have a lot of potential. They have a lot of potential, a lot of spark. So there's a lot of things that can be accessed from them, and so you can utilize them potently. And like Matt is saying, the whole timeline is an opportunity. I am a little famous for the quote tweet, for the magical quote tweet, we'll say. I didn't necessarily pioneer it, but I never saw anyone else do it quite like the way I started doing it. And I think that it is a very useful way. I don't really do it that often anymore. But you know what? I think it is a great way to engage with accounts. Maybe not you. Maybe it's not even antagonistic anymore, because we've all kind of mellowed, right? We've all kind of mellowed after everything. The last like year, it's been a very sort of like, what the fuck's going on? So I think we all kind of like, we're like, okay, gonna like chill a little, not be so reactive, which I think is healthy and good. And then we And then, so we've all chilled, we've mellowed, we haven't become centrists, of course, but perhaps we have synthesized and rectified, both at Tiferet and Yesod, some of the ideas between the polarities, as we often discuss. So I think that is pretty much how we engage with the timeline. But of course, provocation, antagonism, all of those things can be very useful Kabbalistic tools in the toolkit. It's not the only thing. It's not the only thing. But of course, words are magic. We're on an app where words really matter, where words and images, to bring up the idea of NFTs, all that really fucking matters. So if you can combine them in a quote unquote skillful way, then you can make Metamagic. Of course, we don't want to do anything too far right or too far left. We want to kind of bring it again into synthesis and rectification. But we also want to kind of a little bit impose our will. Maybe not impose is not the right word, not the right ionic kind of way to frame it, but it is a little bit of that. It needs a little bit to make the timeline that we want it to. We have to raise the corpses of the carnal ground that we want. We have to call the names of the ghosts that we want. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
So I wanted to branch off both of your points, and especially what Matt was saying with synchronicities and stuff. And I've talked about this before, where Twitter can be very good for catching synchronicities. I think actually, in terms of social media, it's probably one of the best ways of catching synchronicities, just because there's just so much shit on the timeline. Like if you're on YouTube, I see sometimes synchronicities with YouTube, but the recommendation center is very small, and you're not just like, and it's the content that's on YouTube is takes a lot more time to put out. Whereas on Twitter, it's a lot more instant, where it's like somebody can just get that insight, and then it just shows up, and it could be someone you've never seen on your feed before, and then they show up, like they just miraculously show up on your timeline. And I've had like levels of synchronicities that I've noticed before, which are, I mean, it's not like a daily thing. It's actually, I think, fairly rare. I think most of them probably I don't even synchronicities, but I've had a few that are like very potent synchronicities where it's like some like very specific thing going on in my life, and then someone just like literally had the like exact words to explain this very very specific issue. Like there's just no doubt in my mind that it wasn't a synchronicity. Like it's that perfect. And Jin, with what you're saying, and like your content is very abstract and like interpretationable and like creative, which is good for synchronicities as well, and just good for like getting a message across that's more subtle. And I like to share art sometimes, and I mean, I've been posting some of the things that I collect, and I even get that urge sometimes where it feels good to post art that resonates with the energy of like the day. Or there would be a few times where I would be able to catch that like wave of energy, where there was just like some piece of art that I have seen before and like saved, and I was able to like share it, and it was able to get some traction because it was resonating with so many people, and it was essentially like serving as like a synchronicity in some way, like giving out some message. And that's what I really like about art in general, is because some things are just very hard to say, and art can really help get a message out when you don't have the words for it.
Absolutely. So this is a big thing of, obviously Mike brought it, like mentioned my account specifically. So I did start using this sort of more abstract way, because that's how I write. That's actually how I write. Like the way that I do concrete poetry on the timeline, that is actually how I am. That's like the kind of writing that I like. I don't really think about like the post that much. I know a lot of people really draft like very perfect things, and like I go very much by impulse. I just, if I feel it, I'm feeling it. If I'm not feeling it, then nothing will be posted. Maybe an image or a couple of bars here and there, or I'll use someone else's post to like write a couple bars that can be really useful. You know, I had the poet Dustin Cole on my show, Threshold Saints, of course, and he talked about this. He talked about sometimes you have to utilize the first line. He said the whole line, but you can also just think of it as the first word of a poem. And so I often think this is like very Notoria, like this is like true word magic. Like you're gonna use the word of someone else's work, but you're not stealing it, you're not borrowing it wholesale, and you're not using it without credit. You are actually taking it outside of its original context, and you're redeploying it, very much like a bija, redeploying it to affect reality in a way. What I'm saying is that you can also use images. I'm sort of well known for doing the gate thing, like the gate, 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 um, but like the Shinto gates, because that's obviously a big part of Threshold Saints, is like the idea of like walking through the threshold. So there's no more liminal space, of course, than a Torii gate. So I started doing this. Some of you know I was like kind of depressed and not like in the best spirits, so I started doing this as a kind of thing, because the words have to come out. They have to express themselves in some way. I would never call myself personally a poet. I think of myself as more of a writer who just, the words come to me. I just select the way they go together, maybe. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not great. And that's okay. And I just put it out there and I let it be free on the timeline. And, I might have a personal meaning, but the way I write is there's no authorial voice. So, like, yes, I may write something and it may have a subtext to me, but it's not really about me. It's about, like, if it's the person who's reading the poem. That is kind of how I write, which is also very Kabbalistic / Buddhist / Austin Osman Spare kind of like chaos magic way to write. It's really like you are the poet, you who read the poem. It's really your words, your bars. Of course, credit me, don't steal my bars. But, Mike, please go ahead.
Just to like what you were saying, Jin, like it's interpreted by the person looking at it. And what I've noticed with a lot of people who make art is that art, I mean, is generally very intuitive. And the way Twitter works is people are sharing things that are intuitive. I don't think no one's like, for the most part, planning stuff out unless you have like a very specific niche of like you're pushing something. Which there's a lot of accounts that do that. But for the most part, I think a lot of people are pretty authentic in the way that they're just saying whatever comes to their mind. Some people are saying too much. But with art as well, I've noticed a lot of artists make art and they don't even have a meaning necessarily for it. And sometimes the message is not even for them. It can be for someone else. And a lot of the art that I really like, especially, is art that is not, doesn't have a specific meaning, like a very clear, specific meaning. Good art, in my opinion, can be interpreted in different ways. That is one of the things that makes good art for me. Um, so when you're putting that out there and you're allowing other people to uh, find meaning in this thing that you're saying, that I think that adds a lot of value.
Absolutely. I think that that exactly is what Twitter should be for. I think that I'm not against, as we've talked about many times, I'm not against people making their bag. Like, go make your bag. That's all good. Like, prosperity. Okay, that's a big part of the Aeon, right? But I think that the monetization of the sort of the way that people do engagement monetization, I think it really fucks up people's posting style. But of course, you can choose. You can choose. You don't have to post like that. Like, I'll never post like that. If I get 5 likes, like Matt said, if I just post for Matt or Mike or Abby, if I just post for them, it's all fucking good. That's it. 3 likes, I'm fine with that. Yeah, my thing is my thing. So you might like it, you might not. That's okay. Matt, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just thought about a bunch of things here. So first is the idea of the incentives, right? So obviously, if now people are incentivized to have more impressions because they will get money from that or whatever the fuck, then obviously some people would then take the conscious decision to do different things. Or even if X is not paying them, but they are being paid to post, like because they have a product that they want to sell, a service or whatever they want to push an agenda, right? So they have different incentives. But I completely agree with Mike. There it seems to me that much, or at least in my algorithm and Mike's algorithm apparently as well, there seems to be much more people just posting out of their internal intuition, maybe, or from whatever they're feeling at the moment, and so on. And it's funny because then also what Mike said about the like different perspectives, right? We talked a lot about the partist system, so basically having something have at least 4 layers of understanding, from the most apparent and obvious literal to the most occult and hidden and so on. And everything will have that, no matter what. Like, even if the person didn't intend to do it, there's always something behind it. You can see it especially with music and lyrics. People will sing something, and then they'll talk about, I don't know, they're gonna talk about some relationship thing, right? Like in Brazil, you have a lot of tantra music that they talk about relationships and breaking up and whatever, and cheating and whatever. And that's the literal part. But then when you go and read the lyrics, what they're talking about, there's a lot of hidden stuff there, and a lot of times initiatic as well. So somebody knows what they're doing. I would be sure of that, but even if they don't know, they're doing it, so it doesn't really matter. And it's going to affect whoever's reading and interacting with that. And another thing as well, which is really interesting, which I think I kind of learned a little bit with Jin. I don't do it exactly the same, but like the quote tweeting kind of thing. And it's funny because I guess the difference is when I do quote tweeting, I'm not really, I really don't care about who I'm quote tweeting it from, or it's not really, I'm doing something for them. I just want to bring up a point, and I feel it's more interesting if I am bringing where I got the idea from, like where I got that root from. Let's say if I thought about something because I saw a post, I think it's more interesting if I quote tweet it, because then whoever's reading it can see what I said and then also see what I quoted and then make the correlation themselves. So it's like also what you guys were saying, the kind of poet is the one reading it and not the one writing. Like, I'm not necessarily important in that thing. Like, someone could have made that connection as well. I just made it and I want to share it. I just feel like it's interesting. And even for myself, sometimes I take a lot of time going back to my profile and reading some stuff or going back to some connection. So it's kind of a archival kind of thing as well, which is very interesting to do. So it becomes alive. And but then it's funny because a lot of people get attacked. They feel like, oh, especially if I'm saying something like the opposite way or some other way, they feel like I'm a attack them or something. It doesn't matter. It's just funny to see. But yeah, it's again, if you pay attention then to what your algorithm is trying to show you, like what Mike was saying, the hidden meanings even, and then you start to see it everywhere all the time. It's very interesting. And Jin and I talked about this as well a lot of times, where whatever the theme of your week is, the algorithm is going to be showing you. Like, it's going to be pretty apparent. And then when you have some kind of everywhere, like I have my Kabbalah classes, and then we have spaces, they are all also going to be correlated in some way. So when you pay attention, you're going to understand, and then you're going to see the patterns, and then you're going to win the patterns. Hopefully, you don't keep bashing your head against the same stuff over and over. And just to finish off for now, it was so freaking funny the last, I'd say 4 weeks now, where I kind of wanted to start solving this, like one of the patterns that I figured that I was having. And then out of nowhere, quote unquote, a lot of people related to that basically I had the pattern with in the past, out of nowhere, quote unquote, messaged me and like came back, and like some people that I didn't even like, I basically assumed they were dead to my sphere influence, I think. Not that they were literally dead, but I would never interact with them again anymore. But they come to me and I was like, what the fuck? It's so freaking funny. How, again, if you decide to work on it, then it's basically the universe way of testing you and saying, are you sure you are not going to repeat it? Like, we're going to show the bosses again. It's like on Mortal Kombat you have the older ones, you had yourself in the left pillar, like in the left tower, going up against everyone in the right pillar. So it's kind of like that. You're going against the bosses until you reach the final one, and then you're never going to repeat the pattern again. So just very funny interactions that it happen.
That's what it's about for me. It's about posting. Posting to heal the world. That doesn't mean being nice, so don't get twisted. If you piss me off, I'm still going to come for you. But I actually agree with what Matt said. It's not really about the person you're quote tweeting. I think that's much more of like this year of the snake kind of idea. Is like it's much more. We're just being flexible. We're just like saving things in the archive. Maybe not even bookmarking them. Maybe the quote tweet is our bookmark, and so that is like the imposition of our own ideas, but people don't have to listen. Again, it's just offering a different kind of worldview, a different perspective, a different orientation to the tree, as Matt was saying. Like that's why Matt loves the tree, and that's why I love the tree, because it is the. I'm not a perennialist, I'm an axialist, but like it is the quote unquote perennial system. It is like the background to all like reality. It's the meta layer. So why not use it? Why not like try and reorient people to like a greater, higher understanding? There's nothing wrong with that, right? We have to, if you're on X, you're a little crazy, you're a little into the ghost world. So like, why not influence it in like at least ideas? Just influence it through ideas, and then people can sort of discern through their own wisdom, through their own fire of discernment, through their Gevuratic strength. They can then bring those things into synthesis if they so choose, if that's within their will. Because I'm a big free will person. We are agents of ourselves, and we are agents also of the timeline. And I'll say this last thing really quick, and then let Mike go. But Matt, you'll kind of laugh. There's an episode on Rejects coming up. So we had this operant, what he would say, he's an operant magician. He's an operant magician. So operative magician, meaning that he is the best sorcerer in all the world, and he doesn't like any of our speculative ideas or speculative Kabbalah, and he's never had a crossing the abyss experience. He's never had Dathic experiences ever. He doesn't even really believe in them. So I thought that was really interesting. That's like the polarity, like opposing to me. Like I think all magic's about the Dathic experience, the Dathic consciousness, like that true knowledge, the Pardes layer, as Matt said, like Diamond Thunder. That's what it fucking is. That's what all magic is like, to prepare you to go there and to do real magic in the Mind Palace. Like that's really where it fucking is. I know Matt knows this, but I just thought, wow, it's so world. He doesn't even like, he wouldn't call what we talk about even magic. And he thinks that it's all about like the outer ritual performance. Oh, and he said this, Matt. This is the funniest thing I have ever heard in my life. I was like, well, Tantra presents how I do my spiel. I was like, Tantra presents his inner outer secret dialectic. There's perhaps up to 9 layers. And then I said, and then obviously Rabbi Cordovero posited the 5 layers, which we call, as Matt said, the Pardes system. And he's like, well, I don't believe that. I don't believe there's any layer beyond that. When it says blood of bat, you have to go catch a bat and kill it. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not true. It's not true in the grimoire itself. So like, don't fucking cite Agrippa in front of me, buddy. Secondly, we know that's not true. That's not how wisdom literature works. So I just thought that's so interesting that you can think of yourself as such a practical person, but you're reading things from a fucking Protestant sola scriptura perspective. Weak. Anyways, moving on. Mike, please go ahead.
Okay, that's super funny, and I want to say something, but no comment for now. But there's something I want to say that is somewhat tangential, and just talking about a little bit more with the like social media stuff. Well, so I've noticed as well, just like and this is relevant to what you were just saying, Jen, where it's not only, so if you're even studying like esoteric stuff, Twitter is like the perfect experimental ground to see how stuff works in action. And also, like, if you're in the markets, people like social media is like a major indicator that people pay attention to understand where the market is at, because the sentiment and just the feeling, like if you're just scrolling through the timeline on Twitter, like you can get a good sense of where the market is at, and where the market is at is directly connected to where the sentiment is at. And if you're paying attention to other things like astrology and cycle, like and just more deeper studies, like you can really get a hang of like, okay, like this is doing this because I can see it with my own eyes, like on the timeline. And also it can be kind of like manipulated a little bit with your, so I'm not like super um trying to, I mean, I'm pretty natural with the way that I go about things on a day-to-day basis. I think I would be exhausted and super tired if I was like purposely trying to push things like to the extent that I'm trying to like manipulate the energy of like how people engage with my stuff on Twitter um on like a day-to-day basis. But there's been times in the past like where I worked on certain writings for a long time, and I was just concentrating a lot of energy towards um engagement on those like specific posts like for like weeks. And I had like crazy results. So, and I know also generally, I mean, those are like the few instances where I think it makes sense. Like if you had a writing, like if you wrote like a book or something and you want people to like read your writing or read your book, because no one wants to read your writings ever. That's the hardest part of writing is not writing, it's getting people to read your shit. Is what I learned. And that's when you really want to like push things a little bit, but also just trying to live. I mean, I've noticed my engagement and just like the way things um the way I interact with Twitter can usually follow my um energy and like the way, like my happiness. And um if I'm in like a negative state, it tends to push people away. And if I'm happy, then it tends to attract people. It's literally that simple. And like the more you can just kind of like build off of that, like the more momentum you can typically build. And this is like ignoring like just like the natural push and pull of everything going on. But that is just one way of manipulating the energy that is you should try to do without forcing it.
I'm just going to go really quick, Matt, but I promise I'll let you go in less than 2 minutes. Okay, so I did exactly what Mike was talking about. Maybe this is like what we're all three talking about. Like this intuitive nature of Twitter. We're all kind of like the Ipsos. We're all like psionically, as I like to say, we're all scions, right? Or at least the people who are a little more in tune. So there is like a kind of vibe that we're all kind of catching. And yes, it is dependent on your mind. It is dependent on the state of the aggregations. Of course. Kabbalah 101. I think Matt would agree with me on that. But I did exactly what you were talking about, Mike. Is I posted something and I posted a poem. It's not like a poem, but yeah, it's like it's a concrete poem. I shouldn't shy away from calling it what it is, but it can be read in two ways. So I'll read it once and then I'll read it in the other way. And if you look at it, it actually makes sense to read it in either way. So it's kind of like one of those things that perhaps has a non-dual layer of meaning. So I said, higher than even words without meaning. So that's one way to read it. That's a conventional way. But it can also be read higher words than without even meaning. Kind of interesting. Kind of an interesting construction. So what I'm saying is that depending on your frame of consciousness, your reference, sort of your standpoint or your point of view or worldview, that you're going to read it differently. Maybe even what language you grew up speaking will inform how you read it. So, I don't know. Kind of interesting. Matt, please go ahead.
Very nice. I had something to say regarding what Mike brought up about writing is the easy part, and then hard is to get people to read it. And that's going to be the thing for everything you create. Like the same with if you happen to follow indie, startup, coding, whatever niche on Twitter, everyone can build stuff, and they can build it super fast, and especially now with AI, even faster and better. And but then hard is to get people to use the app and pay for it and so on. But because people don't understand that, very simply, the only thing you need to do, quote unquote, only, is to put the idea in people's heads. So it's a lot of the emperor energy, so like marking your territory. So you need to understand, why would someone want to have your thing, like want to experience your thing, and so on. If we're talking business, like if we're talking not entertainment, but something the person has to pay, very likely that's going to be because the person needs it to solve a problem. Like, it's simple as that. If they have a problem and your thing can solve their problem, they're going to pay for it. It's going to be like a no-brainer, right? And then you got to break the cliffs that may arise from when they're trying to buy a thing. Like, maybe they think, oh, the price is too much, or whatever. Like, you didn't sell the idea properly. You're trying to create. It's kind of almost you're kind of almost creating an idol. So if you want to see one of the best market like people in the world, marketing people, just look at religion. They have basically what, like, billion people following the three like older religions and whatever, and then you have like some couple other billion or whatever, how many for the other religions. So they know how to market their shit. That's how it goes. You need to be constantly reminding people that the thing exists. Better yet, if for you to do it, if you have physical stuff out there. So imagine, that's why like outdoors used to be a thing. That's why you need people seeing your stuff all around, like even if it's for a small period of time. That's why ads are so important. Like, you see the thing on YouTube for what, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, but they're paying like high cash for that. Why? If you're not consciously going to remember it, well, because the thing is going to be in your mind. You're going to literally dream about the brands that you see. You don't see a brand, like that's Chokhmah. If you don't see it, you're never going to buy it. You're never going to use it. So the same, I guess, for entertainment. You're not necessarily selling it, but if someone will check it, they have to know it exists. So you have to put it out there. And like doing physical stuff, as in putting it in the physical world. And that could be nowadays in social media and so on. That's still physical. Somebody still looks it through a monitor. That's what I mean. So it doesn't stay in your head. It doesn't stay, hidden somewhere. So just putting it out there, and constantly, it's gonna again arise in people's minds. It's gonna be in the egregores out there, and you're gonna understand as well, if your thing is gonna be, it's not gonna be against some other thing in the egregore. Otherwise, they might fight. Let's say that if you're pushing out an idea and there's some other idea in the egregore that doesn't like you, or it's already occupying that space, you're gonna fight for that space. So again, as it happens in the physical world, like people fight for space, it's gonna happen in this kind of digital and archetypal world. And in the same way, when you stop to think about, if you want something to be seen by a lot of people, your thing has to be like, they have to be able to digest it. So if you want to be super crazy, mega esoteric, niche, and so on, it obviously is not going to reach the masses. And maybe that's cool. That's all right. Like, you don't need to reach the masses for that thing. That's completely fine. Like, there's a lot of, let's say, bands that I follow that I know for sure they're not going to be like Madonna and play for crazy big stadiums, but that's cool. That's sometimes what makes it cool as well. So also understanding, again, where do you want to mark your territory? It's going to be important. And that's when you enter into, okay, well, where exactly should I be posting about this kind of stuff, and so on, so on. So anyways, and then it's funny how also when we think about work, and I mean not work as in a job you have to go and get paid and whatever. I mean something you create, right? That's going to be the thing that can constantly give you something back. If you think about things that you get, like let's say you get pleasure from eating, okay, that's what, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, that you actually get to enjoy it, and then what? Like that's it. You're gonna eat again in a couple of times, but it's over. So you are limited by your senses. Anything like eating, sleeping, taking a sunbath, anything that you're doing, like going to the gym, listening to music, it comes and goes and ends. But doing something like creating, and then some people will bring this the idea of like doing it to someone else can be as well, like providing service for someone else, but also just creating in general. That's going to be what is infinite. You can do it infinitely, and that's why, again, that's why even some would say that the universe even exists, because there's someone out there. I don't see it that way, but it's just how they see it. Someone out there kind of creating existence. So if they're not doing it, kapoof, there's no existence anymore. And also another last thing about, again, you gotta understand the age that you are. Otherwise, you're gonna try to put things into reality, into people's minds and so on, which are not in accordance with the age. So it's gonna fall off short. Even if it gets a little bit of momentum, it's not gonna live up. So if you don't understand, like Jin was talking about, the axial part of it as well, well, guess what? You're gonna get left behind. You're gonna work a lot, and it's not gonna, keep up. Or you're gonna stay behind because you're not understanding that there are new things to do that are slightly different, because everything kind of rhymes and repeats, but sometimes it's like a slight drift to a different place. So again, being aware of that is super important for you to better use the momentums, better use the waves that are coming and going.
Of course, 100%. Of course, it's an aeonic. We're in aeonic space, like the Grey Lodge. Obviously, we're metamagicians, so it has to move in an aeon. What is an aeon? An aeon is a conceptual idea, as Matt said, of the time. Where does that arise? In your own fucking mind. Where do the archons arise? In your own fucking mind. So, like Matt was saying, like about the brands, it was perfect. It was a perfect analogy, Matt. Like religions, yes, religions are like they sell a story. We've talked about this so many times when we did all of our metafictional series, our meta ontology series, not just Anna of the Daughter, but like Welcome to Hyperborea, Aether Punk, like all those series. That's what it was. It was like in preparation to discuss metamagic and metafiction. Maybe those two things are the same thing as we often posited that they were. So, like, what is the aeon? Well, it's the story you carry with you. If you are Christian, you follow the aeon of the sun. There's no problem with that. That's fine. Outer temple for outer temple people. That's okay. No problem. And if you want to be an esoteric, like ortho bro, like Solar used to be, or like many of the ortho bros are, Jay Dyer, I see you, as they are, that's fine too. That's going to be part of the aeon of the daughter. So that's fine. But what we are leaving behind is we are leaving like the transgressivity of the aeon of the mother and the kind of like oppositional nature of the aeon of the father. It's just like that's the reality. I'm sorry. Like if you want to have an aeonic worldview, then that's we're moving forward. We're moving, as Matt said, we're moving forward, and people who want to be with the aeon, they're gonna fucking want to surf with it, and people who want to be left behind, they're going to be left behind in doing we was kangs, as we famously coined, famously barred, right, Matt? We was kangs. They're going to we was kang. You're going to we was kang left hand path, we was kang asceticism right hand path, and like, but no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're going to go in the middle pillar. We're going to go with non-duality, and we're going to go with a kind of higher conception of reality, like love is the cause of knowledge. We're going to go with the era. And that is the whole point. And that is the point of why I even title them Friday Night Gnostic Mass. Because in a way, as they are meta magic, it is kind of like a Friday Night Gnostic Mass. Just saying. Anyways, we are joined by, of course, one of our co-founding brothers, Joshua, the Branch. And if you are mad at me, Joshua, for putting only the Branch on the Kino, I apologize. But I actually thought it looked Kino as fuck. So, I don't know. And it's easier to tag you on IG too. So, I don't know. Introduce yourself, Joshua, and plug anything you want to plug.
Hey guys, I'm driving and I'm in the car with Bluetooth, so I don't know if you can hear me. Hello.
Oh, sorry about that. Please don't drive and space at the same, or drive and surf at the same time. We don't want any, issues. We're not trying to summon abyssal, like we're not Kenny G enjoyers. I mean, maybe we are Kenny G enjoyers. We did read the book, of course, but we don't want to summon any abyssal demons, Lovecraftian things, or anything like that. So maybe later, but not right now. Not while we're all here together. But sometimes those thought forms, those egregores, maybe you could call them, although, yes, they arise from your own mind, and in your own mind, especially and primarily, there is something that also exists outside of them, because the egregore is also the consensual or mass reality. This is often something that chaos magic talks about, attacking consensual reality. This is obviously a big part of like the Aeon of the Daughter, in terms of like the Gnostic framing of the story as Nuria, and how Nuria burns down the Ark 2 times. Very interesting. So this is something we obviously extensively for hours and hours discussed on many, many, many evenings over a year and a half ago. So I won't rehash it, but I think it's interesting to think about, because it is about attacking a part of consensual reality. But it's not like the chaos magic sort of sits in opposition to everything that exists. But it's not really about being in opposition to everything that exists. It's being in opposition to bullshit. It's an arrow of truth, a non-dual arrow, sort of arrow of remediation, and also like moving the fuck forward, and also bringing ideas forward, like Matt was talking about. Like, we have to bring ideas forward. We have to be the aeons, like that, not the aeons of ourselves, but yes, we have to embody those aeonic qualities, and then be like, okay, arrow of truth, like let's fucking go. Arrow of creativity, I'm using very basic, like I'm sort of taking a note from Matt, and like reducing the schizo esoteric Kabbalah bro that I usually am. And if you listen to the show or my show, you will know that I often am like that most of the time. But tonight I'm kind of bringing more of a Malkuthian, we'll say, element to the space, because I thought, everybody, this was also part of the theme of hyperspatial distortion, was kind of like the Mercury stuff. I know we talked about it last week, and how, yeah, actually Bood does not affect electronics. It affects artards, retards, like me, but also, and so that is part of the reason why everyone kind of feels down, depressed, whatever. But it's not. It's that the pole has changed, just temporarily. The pole has shifted. So if you can shift with the pole inside yourself, there's no fucking retrograde. It's over. Like, you can overcome the astrology. Now, is it easy? Is it like super simple? Matt might argue that it is, and whatever Matt says goes. That's totally fine. But I would say it's a little more difficult, especially the more entrenched you are. So, like the daughter, like the Aeon of the Daughter, we want to be dancing in the heatless fire, dancing above desire. That's the whole fucking point. That doesn't mean you don't want things. That doesn't mean you don't will things, of course. But you're just trying to be more flexible in your framework. Yes, Matt Murrah, please go ahead.
I love the post, by the way, the Mercury retrograde affects our cards. But basically, what I want to say, I wasn't here on last week's Spaces to talk about it. I listened to something Mike was talking about Venus, and then I mentioned it in the group chat. And so the basic idea is that Venus is the only planet that goes on the opposite direction. So it goes quote unquote on the opposite direction symbolically. Obviously, every planet is doing the same circular motion, but symbolically, it's going from the opposite direction. So all planets tend towards being rational. Venus is the one tending toward being more emotional, symbolic. Okay. So when we're talking about the retrograde, there are 3 parts to it. That's what also, it's not just, oh, it's retrograde. No, there are three parts to it. And a lot of the thing is the idea behind a planet being in retrograde is basically it's stopping It's getting a little bit slower, and then it's going on the, again, opposite direction, so that you reflect on the stuff. So there's going to be maybe a little bit less energy for you to work on it, but it's just so you don't, it's basically a path correction. You handle all the unfinished business that you had, and again, always in your mind. You handle all the, the aggregations, all the bad programming that you did, so that when it comes back to going to the same place, going back to with full speed, you're in the right path. Otherwise, why bother? Like, that's the Merkaba, that's the 7th arcana, the car, the chariot. It doesn't matter if you cannot, first of all, control the carriage. It doesn't matter, because it's going to go anywhere. Then when you can control, it doesn't matter if you're going full speed, if you're going to the wrong place. So if you're going to, you got the wrong direction, the wrong road, you shouldn't be going full speed. You should find a way to revert, go back, and then go to the right place, the place that you want to arrive. That's not for me to say, you gotta figure that out. But it's completely, and then again, people, if you're a skilled, I guess if you just study astrology, that's fine. I mean, you're just studying astrology. But if you study magic and astrology, you should know that if you're already, but basically creating the idea that some specific astral thing will mean that you are going to have specific problems, guess what? You're going to have those problems. It's as simple as that. It's not, it doesn't matter. The planet could be anything, and you're going to create those problems. So that's why, again, it's important to pay real close attention to what you let stay in your mind, to what the beliefs that you have. And then again, that's why it's important to have the retrogrades, so that it can correct. Of course, you can say, oh, okay, that's not necessarily the best way of doing things. It's kind of like a little bit of the judgment as well, the 20th arcana. So going back, making some retrospective and saying, oh, okay, that wasn't cool. Then let me correct and do it again next time. And that's it. As simple as that. Sure, some mundane stuff might happen, but again, I think we talked about this a lot of times. Does it really matter? When something happens in the Monday mornings, a lot of times you're not really that impacted. You are more impacted by the fact that you read it somewhere, and then you got the emotion that, oh, it's happening. And then at the end of the day, did really something happen in your life, in your personal life? A lot of times it didn't. So again, just be aware, be vigilant, don't fall into the traps, and let people program stuff into you that won't really help in whatever you're trying to do.
See, this is so important, and I'm going to let Mike go really in just a moment. But what Matt said, there are false cycles, fake cycles. The news cycle, the timeline cycle, what is trending? Basically, in my opinion, it's not really worth posting about whatever's trending, unless it's really interesting from a Kabbalistic or metamagical perspective. Sure. Even the astrology stuff, yes, there's an interesting way to engage with it, which I actually think that we all do, all four of us, and obviously Solar's more of a ninja lately on the timeline, but when he chooses to engage in a very humorous, often way, and that's also another good. That's another good way to do it. But there's, I think, pick your battles very carefully. And also, like what Matt said, it's about understanding that it's in dialectical relationship. That is what the problem with even saying Mercury retrograde is. It's not speaking to the greater relationship with Venus, with the moon, with where we live. Maybe that's also on the moon, but who knows? We'll just speculatively we say that yes, we live on Yesod, but because that is, of course, our own minds. So all things also arise from there. That is also the carnal ground, but it can also be the garden, because it's neither nor and it's non-dual. So I agree, and I think that the best way to remediate it is not necessarily to be like a Puritan about your time, or not even the timeline, but let's just say your mind. Yeah, you can absorb things that are you don't agree with. Sure, everybody does. But maybe form ideas about why you don't agree on more serious topics. Like, it doesn't have to, exactly what Matt said. Like, just because they say something is happening in some other fucking, whatever, desert war, it doesn't, unless that is like your quote unquote lived reality, it doesn't affect you in any capacity, none whatsoever. It doesn't even make you a bad person not to think of it. And that's a big part of like the last 5 years has been this weaponization of emotionality to swing you either way. And now, because we're in a time of decoherence, at least that's what we say, it's a lot harder to pin people down on specificity, but it's a lot easier to ignite them on multiplicity. So people have like very strong opinions on a wide range of issues, but actually my feeling is that I think most people are fucking tired. Not necessarily tired as people, but tired of like being inflamed about every issue. And so you see this kind of like, as we've talked about, there has been a kind of grounding, maybe rooting on the path. That's kind of an interesting way. I always say, like, the daughter rises on path 22. So we're kind of like a re-arising, maybe, like as a garden, but a new garden. So it's delicate. So we have to like take care of the plants that are here, the seeds that are planted. Of course, these are just ideas. So I think this pragmatic view, Solar, I haven't released the episode yet, but he called it Aeon. So I want to quote him because he actually came up with this. Like, he came up with this idea. He called it Aeonic politics. And he said if we use the Aeonic ideals to sort of like reimagine politics, like, what is that going to look like? It's pretty fucking interesting. It really is. So I really liked that, and I just think like maybe that is like the whole point of like all of this is like to not just a politics, but just like a reimagining of ideas. And we've often posited this because we often directly attack the we was kings, the seat people, all of that shit, all the like religion, trad larping, esoteric left hand path bro larping, and the like, oh, I need like 10 wives and a Mormon compound LARPing. Like, it's all LARP. But like, let's pragmatically choose, like, with rational, but not overly rational, not like overly scientific, right? Because we don't want to re-experience that, but we want to be rational and logical, but in a way that is in accordance with bodhicitta, loving kindness. And what is that? That's also in dialectical relationship with strength, with discernment. So, as to quote a bar that Matt Murrah himself said, everything has to be rectified in yourself. That's a you problem. Rectify it in yourself. He wasn't talking about me, by the way, but it did apply to me at that moment. So I will just say, like, that's the truth. You rectify that in your own mind, but then if you like want to discuss it, like, we can discuss it. That's cool. And I think that's what we're all kind of trying, sort of like figuring out how to do, because of all these weird broken connections, like the bones on the carnal ground, the body's on the carnal ground, and the body is on the timeline. We all know they're there, but we often walk on them and like sort of forgetting their names, their memories. But if things are cyclical, and even if the timeline is a fake cycle of time, maybe it's not, though, because what is that? What is a fake cycle of time? We're a lot less governed by time than we ever used to be, but at the same time, we're a lot more governed by time because we have basically perpetual clocks in our pocket or in our hands, usually, because everyone seems very addicted to their phones. It's not just us. Who do this, metamagicians, but it's also everyone else. But we don't have to be. I think Matt would agree with this. It's like, where does time arise? Time arises in the nine. Time arises in the mind. Yesod, obviously, but it's a formation from Binah because it's how we understand the three formations of time, which is cosmological time, sort of like this agrarian cycle time, and then also individual time. So that's where time arises. And so if time does arise in your own mind, we get to choose what cosmology, or as I often say, go for ontology, because ontology conquers everything. So maybe be flexible. That's a very ontological way to look at the world. Say, I don't know. I actually don't know, but maybe we can think of things in this way. Maybe we can build paths as we discuss in discourse right now. So I think that that's a very aeonic idea, and I think that's also like what the Grey Lodge is, like in a very maybe in a greater way. It's like yeah, maybe actually we can rethink this. Maybe we're not right or wrong, but we say speculatively that this could be like a new path to that idea. Sorry, Mike, please go ahead.
No problem. That was great, Jen. I put my hand up and down a few times because I was my train of thought was wandering, and there was a few things that you were saying that I wanted to comment on, and then I just kind of there was other things I wanted to comment on, but just the last thing, well, the thing with the archetypes that you mentioned with solar, and this is something that I've kind of mentioned before, and honestly, I'm even a little bit hesitant to even fully share sometimes because I think it really is like the key to politics and why politics annoy the hell out of me, because everyone is really just acting from their archetypal tribe, and it's like, okay, all the archetypes, we need all of them. Like there's not one is not the most important, but people get so caught up in the way that they view the world, and when you reduce it to the fundamental sources, like the four elements, everyone is more weighed towards one of these elements, and they see the world through that, so they understand like the value of that. And the four elements, water, fire, air, earth, they each apply to a political and ideological system. So like water is socialism, fire is like progressivism, air is like libertarianism, and I mean, and earth is like conservatism, generally speaking. But there's within those, like there's alliances, and like those are when fundamentally like that's the root of all disagreement. And there's no perfect system, there's no perfect ideology, but it's a matter of like balancing these as best as you can so that you can, and then there's still some like subjective bias within that system, but like it becomes objectively wrong when you go too far to one side, right? So when you have people being obsessively conservative to the point where it's like, okay, you're not allowed to do anything, you can't do any drugs, you can't do we all have to wear the same clothes, like that's when shit gets crazy. And it's like, is that wrong? And it's like there's a point where it becomes like too much conservatism is bad, right? Too much progressivism is bad, like too much anything is bad. And but when we're looking at where we are in the world, especially like where we are in a cycle, like certain systems and like ideological um ways of viewing the world like are more necessary than others. Like right now everything is expensive as fuck. It's like, okay, like do we need to make shit more expensive? I think it's clear, like I think like it's getting a little bit out of hand, like with certain things. It's like it's very evident to a lot of people, and it's like, okay, like it doesn't mean we go full communist. Like that would be the opposite extreme. That would be crazy. But it's kind of clear, like we have to like move the pendulum a little bit so that we can balance things.
I'm gonna let Matt go really fast, but you made a really like three really great points. The archetypal thing. Where do those four corners, the four watchtowers, where do they meet? In the fifth position, in the central position, in the central axis. In what? In perception. You get to choose. And that's a big part of our Aeon, because we're a mixture of all of those, of course, things. We are the five, which is also the Pardes, right? It is also the Diamond Thunder layer. So it's like a really exciting time to be alive. And like maybe that's what the whole point is like we have these discussions and say, like, yes, that is not useful to be like a, I don't know, like a full on, like, you know, like those people. We'll just reference like a maybe a mid-century era in Germany. Maybe that's not like a fully like well thought out thing, and maybe we don't want to be like a mid-century thing in Russia either. Maybe that's not the right thing, and so especially for the new world. So this is often something that we discuss. Like the new world has a different potentiality than the old world. That doesn't mean that the old world cannot change. Of course it can. But things in the new world get to be decided upon among those who arose here. At least that's an idea that we have. So I just think, uh, Mike, what you said is so important. Is like, yeah, we actually get to reform, re-aggregate. Not all aggregation is bad. Not all klipas are bad. Sometimes you need a new vessel to put the great idea or the Diamond Thunder layer in. That's okay. So that's what it is about. It's about like taking, okay, so this little bit of flux here. What is flux? Flux is like the ash and the smoke and the little bits of bones and metals that are in the atmosphere, and then we just take of them. That's really ideas, correspondences, ways of thinking of the world, and we sort of reconstitute them, we put them back together. Of course, with bodhicitta. So then that's okay. We don't have to call ourselves anything in particular. Right. I think that's a really interesting kind of way that people who came through like the 90s and all of the 2000s can think is like, yeah, labels are kind of bullshit, to be honest. Like, yeah, there's a fundamental like male, female, if you want to divide. I personally like that. Paracelsus, like very good. We should divide things in that way. Shiva Shakti, I think that's a interesting way of compassion and breath, right? Yab Yum. I think that's a really interesting way and probably a primordial way to sort of order the universe. But then everything else you can say is kind of in flux. But that doesn't mean that things don't have clear demarcations or definitions or boundaries. As we said, we're not anti-Saturn either, because it all, like Mike said, you need all of those things. And the best way is in synthesis. How do you get to synthesis? Well, first you start with rectification in your own mind, and then you get to make decisions on like a greater metapolitics or greater like things of, you can start to talk about how you think society should be arranged when you've sort of unified, clarified, and perhaps disaggregated the polarities in, of course, yourself. Yes, Matt Murrah, please go ahead.
Amazing. Just really quick idea, right? As Mike said, and I completely agree, each of the political associations will have more element associations than others. And I think he already did a pretty good job at posing them. Then, with that in mind, think about it like this. If you are born with a tendency towards one of them, let's say you were born with a lot of air positions or earth or whatever, it's going to be very likely that you're going to resonate more with one of those political associations, right? And then it's going to be obvious. It's going to be intuitive that if you have a big enough space, you're going to have different enough people living in that space, which are not going to like the things that are being posited there, because I have yet to see a system that can synthesize and work with all four elements at the same time. I have yet to see something made in a large scale, maybe in like a small scale. Yeah, sure, you can have some things going on. I remember in the archaeometer, they talk about synarchy. So basically having, instead of, it's not meritocracy where you have the merit to have the thing, but basically it's highly agentic people doing the stuff and so on. So like, you gotta read it to completely understand it. But basically, you have this society of, it's not aristocracy. Also, it's a little bit different. They explain in the book. I'm not going to be going over that, but I think it would be somewhere around those lines where it's more balanced towards all the elements. But then the idea is, if you don't understand yourself and which of the elements you will resonate with the most, then you might end up being stuck in systems and things that are not necessarily a fit for you. And when I mean systems, I don't mean only political systems. I mean magical systems. I mean musical systems. I mean whatever you're doing. Like if you go and think, oh, I'm gonna be the best magical man because I'm gonna use like Enochian magic and a lot of this and that. Who said it? Like just because the guy got a bunch of impressions, whatever, a lot of people use it, doesn't mean that it's good for you. You gotta figure out what is good for you, and it's gonna be a heck of a lot easier if you understand those types of associations. That's why again the tree is so beautiful for that, because you can clearly see it. You can clearly see if some group, some type of initiation is more water related, more fire related, more earth related, and then again you can make all of them. You can getting initiated is easy. It's like enlisting, right? You can enlist for a lot of martial arts. Getting to the end of them and getting a black belt and getting duns after this and so on, that's going to be the hard part. Get to understand them. That's the first step. Get to understand what's there and understand yourself and see, okay, what works best. Also be flexible like a kid. Like a kid, you get a toy now, maybe 10 minutes afterwards, you're going to get another toy, and then some other day you're going to do something else. So you're not stuck. Again, we talked about this 1,000 billion, quadrillion times in the spaces. Like just be flexible in the way of maybe this week or the next 3 weeks you're going to be more focused on music stuff. Don't wait. Don't create barriers of saying, oh, I'm going to study music when I have the time or when I have the money. Just go and study. It doesn't have to be much, but just go and study. Maybe go for, you don't even need to go for classes nowadays. You can go to an AI and ask for it. You're going to learn a little bit of stuff. You can grab maybe, instead of buying like an instrument, you can get it from someone for just a little bit of time, or go to maybe like a public space that has it. I don't know, whatever you live, how it works, but basically just do it now that you have the will to do it. Otherwise that will vanish, and then you lost it. You're not going to be able to do it again, or worse, you're going to get stuck and crystallized with that will, and then you're going to wait God knows how many months and whatever, how much time to do it again. And then when you go back to do it, you're going to ask yourself, well, why am I doing this? Well, because the you that wanted the thing, it's out. It's out of the window. It's not there anymore. So you should have done it when the will came. So that's, again, the idea of being flexible. So getting those cliffs out. You're not whatever you think you are. You're not your profession. You're just acting out your profession. You're not from whatever place you were born. You're just, again, you're acting as if you are, that's what I think nationalism, a lot of, like, it's whatever, like why you're going to be nationalist if you're not really from that place. Like maybe your character is from that place, but again, even that, how do you really define it? So anyways, I'm not going to get into that, but the idea is being flexible with whatever's going on with your life, and you're going to change a lot. So if you understand yourself, then it's going to be easier to adapt to those changes and then create better systems for yourself. Again, as we talk a lot of times, creating the kingdom first from within and then increasing it, then going outwards to your home, to your closer family, which doesn't necessarily even have to be blood family, but just family, like people that really have regarding in good regards, and then the cities, the street, the city, and so on, so on. So it all arises internally first. Don't try to fix the world before you fix yourself.
Well said. I second that. Amen, brother Matt. I agree with that 100%. Honestly, that's. I think we've talked about this as a lodge. We love the idea. I know Solar brought this up, but the idea of the anarch, Jung's anarch, and Jungers, excuse me, not Jung, Jungers anarch, and I love that idea. And then also love what Matt said about synarchy, and then also what Mike has brought up about network sites. Like we're moving into a time of decentralization now. What does that mean? That might just be conceptual. That might be actual, like more decentralized, because like Matt said, like smaller units of meaning retain their meaning longer over time. So like the relationship you have with your own mind, which is where time even arises in the first place. So that relationship that you have with your kingdom, which is also your Malkuth, least in a way, you want to disaggregate the Moku so you're more Diamond Thunder, so you can travel through the fucking tree a little more easier, access that higher knowledge, or even go to Keter or beyond if you want. If you can get there, which you all can, because of course that's what the whole space is. You have to be agential. You are agential. That is the number one worst thing about probably cosmology and ideology, is that you are not agents of yourself. You are agents of yourself, number one, first and foremost, more than divinity, more than any of that. Because any conceptualization we have of ineffable things are inevitably aggregated. So we don't know what those things are. So that's why you have to disaggregate. That's why you have to, clear the skandhas, clear the klipas, break the conceptual layers. And so I think that that's what we try and do, especially like in astrology, but also like talking about like karma and like the difference between like reincarnation and rebirth. Like it's so much better to at least relate the story that it is not fixed. And you are not fixed, and you can change, and you can actually improve your life, and you can improve yourself. And I think all of those themes and ideals are actually very aeonic and generally quite positive. Of course, you don't want to necessarily make those things into a religion in and of itself. Like, I think that's what a lot of people are guilty of online. They take like a great idea and then they make it an identity. But identities are kind of bullshit. So just be yourself. It's an Aeon. The kids don't care. The Zoomers don't care. They're all about cringe. They don't mind it. They love authenticity. They like sincerity. That's fine. Millennials, like, we're so averse to cringe, yet we're like the cringiest of all. So, that's the kind of that's the kind of reality in it and everything, right? Is that as Matt Murrah said, and just ride with it. Who the fuck cares? Okay, Mike, and we don't have to live like the boomers. That's the other thing. We don't have to live like the boomers. That doesn't mean that we go full on like crazy, like Albanian under Hoxha, like communism. It just means we can just reconceptualize. Maybe we go into more libertarian. I think that's a slightly better positionality, simply because air is the aggregated element of all three. So you could posit that political system that leans more heavily. It doesn't have to lean far. It doesn't have to mean like no rules, no state, no nothing. It doesn't have to go all extreme, right? But it can just be on that quadrant, and that is actually more aeonic, you could say. That would be the more aeonic position. Okay, yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Okay, that was great from both of you. And one of the last things that Jin, you were talking about, well, there was one of the things that you're talking about, Jin, as well, that I wanted to segue in with was just this concept of, I mean, you're always talking about how you have essentially free will to change your fate. Like that's you're constantly expressing this and like clarifying this. Like and I've heard Matt talk about one time as well how give some more nuance to that concept, because you do have forces pushing you in certain directions, but it's not like you have one singular goal in your life and it's only forces pushing you in that one direction. Like things are in flux, things are changing all the time. And the thing that Matt was talking about is like, if you don't like grab it when it's there, you will lose it. Like if you don't go on that hunch, and it's like you won't lose it forever necessarily, but there's opportunities that arise and you have inspiration that arises at certain times, and if you don't take advantage of it, you will lose it for some time temporarily, and you may lose out on some opportunities forever. And there's always more opportunities, but it's just there's just it's not a singular path. There's even if you have like even if you're like a soul that like incarnates with somewhat of a singular purpose, there's, which is I think more rare than not having like a singular purpose. Like there's many ways to get to whatever destination, and especially when you're just navigating these waves, like you have to really, as as an individual, it's very hard to understand how the energy is affecting the way that you can move through these energies. And as someone who collects art has seen like how these artists function with their art, inspiration comes in waves. And it's like artists have hype cycles within themselves. So there's like larger waves which affect the art market, but then individual artists will have hype cycles, and they will have, and this is pretty well known to people who are um avid collectors in the space, like artists will peak and then their art will suck for some time, maybe like a few years. Like they will peak and they will not have good art for a long time. And there's a very important natural reason for this, is because like you can't, if an artist was having dropping good stuff all the time, they would be in the spotlight forever. Like there's like a natural um there's a natural way that every artist can kind of like have their time in the spotlight, but there's, I don't exactly know where this originates from, but it happens with every artist. And you can basically assume that after an artist has got really popular, you can assume that they're going to lose popularity over like the next few years, and they're going to kind of like, they're not going to be in the spotlight the entire time. They're going to lose, and then their stuff is going to like devalue. This is just a natural process, and everyone is aware of this. Like the longer they're in the space, and the um talking about before with, and this with the political systems and just like the governmental systems. So like democracy and like the way we have it right now, it's obviously flawed. There's so many flaws with it, but in some way it's actually good for um going with the flow of like the push and pull of the pendulum swing, because you see with the party that is usually gaining in popularity, it switches like every 8 years. So you'll, there's a high chance within a certain like time frame that like a Republican will win, and there's a high chance that like a Democrat will win. And it's just like it's just a common sense. Like people see that you get it. People vote in a Democrat, and then a Democrat is president for 8 years or whatever, and then it's kind of, they may do beneficial things, but I think the problems become a lot more apparent, and just not even just what they're actively working on, but it's a natural swing where it's like their blind spot has to be mediated. And it's like it becomes the middle part starts to notice, because it is becomes too obvious to ignore. So then the pendulum swings to the opposite direction, and then and vice versa. And with other types of governmental systems, or I don't know if you would call that government system, like monarchies. Monarchies are interesting because it's like you have one person governing, you have a king or queen, queen, like governing a nation, or is not good for going with the flow of energy, because you have this one person with this like, it's essentially a like dictatorship where they can't flow. And that is one of the major problems with that type of like rigid system. But the one thing that is good about like a monarchy is like the inheritance of 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 gaining power, because in that way you have this like deeper like spiritual way that uh essentially the universe can like put people into like this line of inheritance, so that the proper person can get power. So in a sense, like that is better than democracy, where it's like just that aspect of it, where it's like they can get the perfect person, assuming like they're not assassinated by their brothers or sisters or something. Like they can be put into the line of succession, like the perfect person essentially could be put into the line of succession and like raised to like be the perfect like emperor or king, and then they could rule, and then like they could actually have like a functional and like successful run system. But I don't know, and I don't know what the future of the political systems are going to look like, but I just think that's an interesting facet, because I think a lot of people would think like monarchies are just like inferior systems of like, you know, controlling people, like running a society, but there's actually pros to that type of system.
Great job, Mike. I think you brought up amazing points all. I will just say that I've made an argument, and I think we've broadly made argument. Definitely, Joshua and I have done this together, spoken about this. Is sort of like the bureaucracies are inherently like klipas, but in the negative, like in the bad way that those things are. Like, not all klipas are negative, right? Sometimes they're just names. There's nothing wrong with the name of something, and if there's nothing wrong with the institution even, or a vessel, but it's like where those things get they bring you down into the lower worlds. And like, yes, physical like institutions can do that. Like the ideas can be so degraded, just like lower and lower in the carnal ground, so under the earth. So you don't want to, it's not that's not ideal. So that's really, I think, a remedy, a very like aramonic remedy, you could say, to sort of like you don't want klipothic formation. So you don't want like a quote unquote deep state. You don't like, you want to avoid these kinds of formations of hidden power, but it is also about like and it's not about the leftist thing of like holding power to account. Like that clearly isn't really true either, because it doesn't really happen. It's like it's kind of like a show, like a play that's put on in front of us, but it kind of, as Mike was saying, it kind of provokes the negative reaction. And so everything has to be like mediated, remediated. It's very in the polarities. But the better place to be is in the middle pillar, so you're not so swung by the polarities. So, anyways, yes, Joshua, I saw your hand, and then of course I won't even go into interstice, and Matt Murrah can go ahead after Joshua.
Cool. Yeah, I made it home from my journey. It's been a long week, a lot of driving. But anyway, I had a few notes here, so wanted to just kind of go through them real quick here. In regard to what Mike was explaining there about artists having a period during which maybe their art sucks, I think that, because my experience, I can only ever like write poetry, for instance, when I'm miserable and depressed or whatever. So my theory would be that an artist's art is only good when they're suffering, probably. And so if life starts getting too good, their art probably starts sucking, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Because they probably don't have a well from which to draw from to create the art, and then also wanted to ask a question. I think I asked you once before, but does ontological does that mean to reduce something down to its fundamental parts or something like that? Can you answer that real quick?
Oh, yes, sure. I'm sorry. It's just it's the metaphysics of being. So we're just talking, it's like the meta reality, exactly what we talk about. So just think of like the broad themes in implication to religion, to cosmology, to astrology, to the physical planets, to the things. Like when we talk about Kabbalah, we're talking about ontology. Okay, when we're saying like traveling through the Sephira, and we're talking about like the concepts, the colors, the numbers, the relationship between the other Sephira and each other, and the paths, that's ontology.
Okay, well,
because we're
I think
relating, but then we have to relate them to like the paths and to how like people can maneuver and live their lives. That's really what ontology is, Joshua.
Yeah, so I guess the thought I had then might still fit, because I wasn't sure if it matched the word exactly. But so when you guys were talking about, because Matt used a different term, kind of simplifying things so that they're easier to digest or understand, and I wondered if maybe ontology was kind of a similar meaning. But what it made me think of, though, was I was helping somebody with math homework the other day, and it was saying like simplify this mathematical expression, and it's tricky because you can think that you have the correct answer, but oh no, you didn't reduce it enough apparently. So I just think it's funny because it's like using a microscope. As you change the objective lens, maybe that's kind of ontological, perhaps. From this objective lens, you have the such and such perspective, so on and so forth. And so the further you drill down, right, it's more detailed, perhaps, and more granular, more finite and reduced, but what's funny is that all of those answers can be correct in some form. But if what you're looking for is the simplest form, right, then of course it's only correct once you can't reduce it down anymore. And the Greeks referred to the atom as that thing that can no longer be devised or divisible. So you could almost refer to like the quotient or end result or answer of a mathematical simplification almost as an atom, perhaps, right? So I wonder if there's any correlation there, which kind of relates to my next point, and I'm almost finished. When you guys were talking about Venus rotating left, that's very peculiar to me because I happen to be ambidextrous. I was born left-handed. So things like that always jump out to me. And so just like there's only 10% of people on the planet that are left-handed. Well, in relative terms, that's about the same percentage of planets apparently that are left-handed if Venus is like one of 8, 9, 10 planets. So I think it's kind of curious that seems to persist. So why is everything not right-handed then? Well, I think something about of things, Venus in this case, must have a certain role, right? Love is the cause of knowledge, right? So maybe Venus plays a role here in that due to its left-handed nature. Maybe it is like a left-hand path inherently in a sense, right? So I don't know. It's just a passing thought I had, but it reminded me of something. There's something called chirality in DNA and molecules, and so these will only fit with other chiral molecules that are, spiraled or helixed. So DNA, of course, is the most well-known example of this. But did you know all DNA and the bases, they're all right-handed or spiral to the right, but the amino acids all spiral to the left. So it's a necessary component to complete it. And they kind of refer to these as like mirror images of one another. So it's for some reason it's essential. It's meant to be like a complementary reflection or image or pairing. So there's the necessity of it, right? It must. There's no life without that, right? So there's no spark. So maybe it relates to maybe the first cause in some way, shape, or form. And that might have been. Yeah, I think that was all my notes. Thank you.
Okay, I just think that was great, Joshua. Thank you so much. Great points. It's not that Venus is the left-hand path. It's that Venus is that sort of thing that you're talking about, the outer density, the planetary density, or you can say Rahu himself, because he loves Venus very much. So he loves to, in the lower worlds anyway, his tail. So not his tail. I'm sorry, his head portion is always around there, Rahu specifically. So you can say that materiality, like that sort of the counterclockwise nature of Shukra. It's like the worship of materiality, not necessarily even the self. Of course, it can relate to that, or the illusion of what you think yourself is. It can also be the worship of that. But it's really the worship of like material goods, like in totality, like the golden cow. That's a very excellent way to sort of encapsulate what like Venus worship would be. Yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Amazing stuff. bear with me. I have a lot of notes, and I'll try to make a good journey. So let's start from the Venus, maybe, which is the last thing Jin and Joshua were talking about. I don't think I mentioned. So I mentioned the Venus is different from the other planets, but I'm gonna read the thing that I said in the group chat, so it makes more sense. So it is the only planet that rotates in the opposite direction. So it goes to the right instead of to the left. And then the idea is that perfectly, and I didn't make this connection before, so that's really nice, Joshua, because I also happen to be, at least when writing and doing some stuff, I do it with the left hand. And that means the right brain is the one controlling it, right? So again, you're going from the left to the right. The idea is that when you go from the right to the left, you first have the image, and then you rationalize it. That's how most planets do it. Then Venus is going to do the opposite. You're going to take language, you're going to take the rationalization, and you're going to take it into an image. And then the point is, then when you connect this to Kabbalah, so Venus being Netzah, if you remove then the language, the rationalization, and then you just observe the image, then you become silent. That's what Netzah helps you do, controlling the emotions. So I wonder then, with your point, it makes a lot of sense that Venus could be somehow connected. I don't know your map, but I have quite a few important Venus placements, and then I have this thing with the left hand. So I don't know about you, if you have something similar as well. Could be. It would make sense. Then the amino acids thing, it's very interesting that again, you have 20 amino acids plus 2 pulses. That makes them 22. I'm not going to say all of them are connected to one of the 22 arcana or paths or letters or whatever, but they are. So yes, indeed, you need them. You can produce them all the time with gestures, with a lot of things. So yes, they get very important. It almost always comes back also to like DNA and genetics and blah, 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 blah. Another thing you were talking about, the being able to explain something, definitely that's the best way to know if you really know something, right? Is being able to explain it in very simple terms, because if you cannot, then you don't really explain it. And I'm gonna try to do that now with the synarchy thing that I briefly mentioned. And then when Mike was talking about the monarchy, I got better reminded of how it works. So synarchy would be Saint Eve's idea of being the opposite of anarchy. Because if you understand the context on his age, whatever, he was saying that a lot of people were trying to be anarchists as well. So his idea was being the opposite of that, or basically to break that. So synarchy would be the complete opposite in the sense of everyone's kind of joint. That's what the name even means, like it's joint activity, right? That's from the synarchy. So it's everyone working together. He would envision something like having a government with 3 councils, again, not by chance. One would be for learning, like academia. One would be for the laws, like judiciary things, and another one for commerce and so on. So there would be like a clear hierarchy, separation of things, and then but all the different hierarchies would kind of help each other in the way they can, and so on. Again, very kind of topic and so on. But what I find really funny when Mike was talking about monarchy, and if you think about Kabbalah terms, every sphere is something in the real world, is something physical. So let's say Malkut, it's going to be the word, okay. Every sphere, first of all, has a hierarchy. So there's the head sphere, Keter. That's going to be the top, again, it's not by chance that it's at the top. It's the king, it's the crown. It's the one sending the information down, sending the light down. So there is a clear hierarchy of things. And if you're talking about each of the spheres, all of them will have a Keter on them. So for Malchut, that's not different. For Malchut, you have Malchut Tzedek, you have Melchi Tzedek. Tzedek being the just king, the clear king for the thing. So there's no escape from it, even if we don't want to mirror it in, doing the same in in let's say physical terms, like Mike was saying, having a monarchy or not, there is a spiritual monarchy already. So it's very funny that it's not necessarily monarchy, right? But it's just the same idea. You have kind of someone taking care of that. So on monarchy, because at least from the way you can study, they can change. Like it's not necessarily the same person all the time, or they don't necessarily come from the same family, blood family, quote unquote. Because we're not even talking about blood anymore, right? It's all in the astrals. But there is this idea, because again, you what's the incentive? If for politics, the incentive is to you are going to be already there. Like for democracy, you're going to be already there for 4 years or whatever. Most countries, you're going to have your salary no matter what, unless you make a big fucking like bullshit. You're not going to get impeached or removed. So what's the incentive really for doing a really good job? Like you're basically just planting the seed for a re-election for yourself or for the next person that it's from your team. So again, it's all about incentives. If you're already the king, if you're not a tyrant, then the incentive is to make your kingdom be the best kingdom ever. And that's why we come back to, yes, your kingdom, your malchut first is yourself. If you cannot take care of that, doesn't really matter. You cannot really change anything else. So start with that. Your house, your street, your city, your neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. Just go increasing. If everyone did this, there's enough malchut for everyone, for them to be there. They're just kings there. And another very interesting thing that I was thinking about when Mike was bringing up the idea, or when I bring up the idea of doing your passions, doing whatever it's driving you at the moment, and then Mike said, yeah, it's very unlikely, it's going to be very rare that someone does just one thing, like has a big main purpose. And not by coincidence, I was researching the founder of a metal band, a death metal band, basically what some would say is the first death metal band, or the one at least that propelled the genre. Well, not by chance, the band is called Death. And the founder, I was thinking about, because he died kind of early, like on his 30s or something, like 34. So I was thinking he worked on this thing which became, like super, it was basically his legacy, right? Everyone that thinks about death metal in a way knows the band or knows him. So I was thinking, okay, maybe he's going to be a good example of a guy that did just one thing. And it's very interesting because, it's very intriguing, because then I was researching, and then he actually did a lot of other stuff. So he had like Taurus sun, and then what was it, like Cancer moon, I think. So he was actually very a home person, like a homebody. Like he would come back from tours and just stay at home, be with his friends, and be cool. He liked animals a lot, and so he would do a lot of other stuff. Like again, he was. If you search for him, you're just gonna see the death metal stuff that he did, and so. But he actually did a lot of other things, and that's how life goes. Even if you are here, like this guy, if you look at his life, probably he came for a very, like, again, he came to do this. He was the guy that fucking created this genre. And even, again, he, as Joshua was saying, if he didn't suffer, or at least if he didn't have the eyes for suffering, because you don't have to suffer yourself, but he had the eyes for suffering. All this music, again, it's talking about death. So it's not going to talk about pretty little cool things. It's not going to be all cool and happy and so on. It's going to be about suffering, because you're talking about that. So it is transformative and so on. And he went through a lot of things himself for him to even be able to talk about it in an authentic manner. So that's why it's going to be, again, important to understand what is your life and how can you live it authentically. If your life is to be freaking sad and create the best poems ever, well, don't try to be happy, hippie, cool person. Like, be sad and do the thing. That's it. Don't try to be something that you're not. And it's again, very curious, because as Joshua was talking about this, and I was thinking about this idea with Metal Guy and so on, a post appeared in my timeline. Again, timeline always answers if you're paying attention. But a guy basically saying that he believes that a lot of high-performing, entrepreneurs and so on, they are driven from this idea of not feeling enough when they were a kid and something like that. Okay, but then when they go and heal that part of them, they don't have the drive anymore, right? So it connects with this idea. If you're doing something, ask yourself why you're doing it. Why do you want to be best entrepreneur ever? Why do you want to be a musician? Why do you want to be in so? The answer is not going to necessarily mean, oh, because I'm doing, let's say I'm being an entrepreneur because I have this lack of, doesn't matter, people don't care about me or whatever. Doesn't matter that if you understand it, then you have to stop doing it. You can do it, but now for different reasons, because now you understand why you're doing it. But at the same time, if you were doing something just because of something else, then you're not really going to the point. You're going to be infinitely doing it, and you're never going to arise at the place that you needed to arise. So if, let's say, these guys, the high performer entrepreneurs, then they realize, oh, I'm just doing this because as a kid I wasn't recognizing whatever, and then now you recognize it. Well, if now you don't need to be a top entrepreneur yet anymore, don't be it. I remember there was I think a lot of months ago that there was a lot of talk on ayahuasca and that some CEOs would go and do ayahuasca and then they don't want to be CEOs anymore. Great, because they realized that the thing that they needed for them to be CEOs is not necessary anymore. That's it. That's what the medicine will do. And then cool for them. If you do it and you still want to do an entrepreneurship, cool for you as well. It doesn't really matter. Just need to be clear. When it's clear, it's fine. You can do it without being stuck. And I think this is all for now.
I totally agree 100% with what you just said, Matt. I think that was great. I think that is exactly how to navigate this specific aeon, and I think that it is all about the aether wave, which is the 4 and the 5 together, of course, rectified in, of course, your mind, Yesod, the moon, the crystal millennium kingdom. It totally makes sense, right? The fire and the water. And I was thinking, even when Matt, you were talking, I was like imagining both Geburah and Hesed in the more polarity difference, the fire and the water, in particularly. And you were talking about the politicians drawing their salary. Well, there's nothing more Hasidic in many ways than drawing a salary, because you're progressively tying your it's very meritocratic in theory, but in practice, it is actually much more Binah, because Hesed and Binah have a very fundamental and important relationship that I think that gets very overlooked in modern Kabbalah. So it's Jupiter and Saturn. And I just think, of course it ties into them becoming entrenched and looking to the next election. That's very progressive in a way, right? You're looking to the future. You're looking to expansive, infinite growth. Where can my political career take me? Maybe I'll start to sit on some corporate boards. I'll start doing this, and I'll have a book deal. We all laughed a few years ago about how all book deals for politicians are just money laundering, and yes, they probably are. So, it is what it is. And so the system that we live in is, I think, a lot more up to us than a lot of people would have maybe you believe. And I think that we have to look at these people also as magicians, just as we are magicians, in a very fundamental and similar way. You have to look at them as playing a game. I'm not talking necessarily about masonry or anything like that, but I'm just saying they are kind of playing, they're playing the tree. So that doesn't mean you have to emulate them, but maybe it's also important to kind of think about them also in the way that not carry them with you in your mind, but just look at them as sort of do I like the way that they're doing this? Because a lot of people tend to ascribe very secretive, kind of oh, it's all conspiracy, but maybe the real conspiracy is not a conspiracy at all. But maybe maybe this is just they understand a little bit more that this is how you interact with reality, just like we do. And we just have to maybe learn to apply it better to our own actual lived lives, because as we always used to say, the way you live your life is the greatest ritual. So, the reality is like, do you want to emulate the magician? Do you want to be his archetype? Or not the magician, I'm sorry, the politician. And do you want to be his archetype? Well, maybe like Matt was saying, like, you don't have to go against type. You can lean into type. There's multiple different kinds of types. You don't have to be the villain or the hero. You don't always have to lean into the extremes of the archetype. That's why I like Quicksilver Surfer, because it's like the perfect way to sort of flow through different archetypes. Maybe you're more into Binna. So there's different archetypes there. So maybe that's the idea of Quicksilver Surfer when you're there. Is like, yeah, you can actually traverse through different archetypes. You don't have to be like the, Decayed King, Decayed King. I'm so tired of that. No, I'm not saying I'm tired of that, but I'm tired of people explaining that Sephira planet idea, conceptual way of thinking in the same way. That's why I always say I like to use the metaphor of text. Black text on white parchment paper, flickering in the candlelight. That's what Binah is for me. But, there's different ways to describe different things. So I just think that, just like with that, we can use the different frameworks to sort of relay newer and fresher and maybe more aeonic and maybe more ideas. But maybe they're also like just part of the same tree, but they're just different views on it. Maybe it's turning with us. Something Matt likes to post, his GIF that of the Kabbalah that actually moves. Yes, the tree moves. The tree expands. It's very Hasidic in a way, but yes, water is the foundation of life, right? It's just like with water traveling up a tree. Yeah, it's expanding, it's growing, it's unfurling before you. Blue, green. Talked about this so many times. Okay, Joshua, yes, please go ahead.
That was quite lovely. I was able to flesh out my idea a little bit there. I'll try not to be schizo, but bear with me. Before I go into that, though, I will mention, so as far as payday, you get paid every fortnight. So I've always thought it was kind of funny that game is so popular, because most people probably don't know that, So every 14 days is considered a fortnight, and you get paid like twice a month, basically. So that might be how it relates to the moon and Yesod, like you were saying. And it was traditionally your salary. I think that word comes from salt. So you were paid with salt originally. And also you can equate the phases of the moon also with silver. A lot of times 30 pieces of silver is a theme in the Bible. Christ was betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, for instance. Let me see here. Oh, okay. So I had an epiphany while Matt was talking about the amino acids. So he said there was 20 and 2. I wasn't sure what the 2 was, but he separated the 2 there. And that reminded me the High Priestess is the second card, right? So I was thinking, oh, okay. So she's holding the Torah scroll in her lap. That's the word, like you said, the black letters on the paper, right? And so she's holding the logos, the word. So the other 20, so I wonder if we're kind of onto something there, And then, of course, the other thing that kind of intrigued me about this is Hebrew's written from right to left. So there's that chirality difference there in some of the languages that are written, different directions. And I thought, whoa, what are the odds, right? That it happens to be contrary, right? And goes from right to left. So in a way, you could consider it left-handed, because if you're left-handed, you can write Hebrew without smearing it, But anyway, and then Jin was mentioning something about like Binah, which is Saturn, right? Being wisdom as well. So reading that illuminated script with the light, well, technically speaking, with Latin or Greek, I think the term Lucifer is light bearer, right? So with the light, the word is revealed. And so if the morning star is Venus, Venus reveals the logos, right? So love is the cause of knowledge because it illuminates the word.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I would think of Hebrew. This is how I'm not disagreeing with your framing of Hebrew, but I'm just going to maybe posit a different angle. It tends to go extreme because it's a language of either fire or water. This is a long disagreement in Kabbalah, whether the first word emerges from fire or water. More Lurianic Kabbalists prefer fire. But maybe that's also in Buddhism. So we also have the idea of secret, like the secret language emerges in fire. But then you also have the idea of mem and like the word arising from the primordial ocean. So I think that is what it tends to be, because Chinese can also be read in the same way, up, down, left, right, left, all the ways. Those are dragon languages. You don't have to think of them as so planetary, so fixed, right? Like a lot of like all technology is Rahu. That's a good way to think of it, I think. Just like think like all technology, all like the things that we make, the Luciferic plus Aramonic force, the physical phone is Rahu, and the software is Ketu. So those things are brought into synthesis while we do this, while we use them. So the language is very, very much the same way. It's a technology. It can be a ritual methodology. It can be a way of programming reality, of course, or indeed deprogramming reality. So it's all about the ways you use it. So yes, a language might have a natural inclination to one side of the tree or one of the pillars, but it can always be brought into synthesis. It doesn't have to go at extremes either way. That's always a choice. However, I will say this: a lot of modern Judaism does prefer this kind of more Hasidic lens. That doesn't mean Hasidic. It means I'm talking about the Tomer Devorah, the palm tree, and sort of this idea of the 13 expressions of mercy in the world. So if you rely on an overbearance of mercy, that's not in good balance either. But there's also an explanation, a resolution to that paradox, is that that's the highest expression of God that we can possibly kind of like attain, aspire to, activate, and it has that there's a specific idea of Bina called ahava, which is the love, but it's not love as in like love is a cause of knowledge. So I just want to differentiate that too, Joshua, is that ahava is obligation love. It's love like to the state, to your people, to your family. It's obligatory love. I'm talking about love that arises at Yesod, at Tiferet, at Da, and at Kether. And maybe it's the pink descending light itself coming down to Malkuth. Or the opposite, because the 10 is also the 11. So there's a different kind of love. It's not and it's also rising on path 22. So it's a lot more about man, a lot more about love and perception. Because what is love? Love can't really be unrequited. That's not really love then. Love has to be in perception, in will. You have to say, I accept. I know you love me, and I accept. Okay, yes. That's also why I like that image of the Dakini dancing, Kurkula specifically. Because it's up to her. It's her will. That's the same. It's up to you. It's up to your will. So that's the same. It's like that's what it's kind of saying. It's saying like no, and that's the problem I had with daughter is he affixed the daughter to Bina, to Ahava. But there's many words to describe love. There's many words in Hebrew to describe love. There's many words in Sanskrit, which is more my style, right? Obviously, and so that's why I said path 22. It has to be the balance. It can't just be Bina. It can't just be Gevurah, like Crowley's idea of Aeon of Horus. And it can't just be Hod, which was Nema's idea of Ipsos. It has to be sort of a disaggregation, a synthesis, and a pragmatism that brings it into the worlds that we actually inhabit. Pragmatism. So that's basically it, Joshua. Just don't think of it in like It's so in the polarities. It's kind of between the polarities. Okay, yes, Matt, go ahead, and then Joshua.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the amino acid thing. So basically, we have 4 acids. So amino acid, it's like a small acid. We have 4 acids: adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. So it's the AGTC. And then they group in 3. Then we have the trigrams, right? They group in 3, not by chance. And then on these groups of 3, they have different combinations. So 64 possible combinations. Trigrams, 64, kind of a I Ching illusion there. And as far as I remember, we have 20 amino acids that we know why they work, like for what they work. Like amino acids then produce proteins and so on. So we know for a fact 20 of them what they do. Now, there are other 2 amino acids that appear, but we call them like it's stop signs or whatever. So they're not really doing something, or they are special or whatever. Again, as far as we know, because there are 64 combinations. So in theory, there are 44 possible amino acids, if they would be combined, that they might even appear in the sequence, but we kind of just disregard them just because we don't understand. It's what people say, oh, a lot of the DNA is junk. Is it really? Like, if you don't understand it, is it really junk? Or was it put there in the wrong way? Like, it's just waiting to be used and so on. That then is another question. But anyways, that's the idea. It's like the other two would be the stop sign. So they are indeed some type of combination, but they are used in different ways.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. It's so funny we brought up this discussion of like DNA, because I was just thinking today, like, I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not saying that at all. Don't misunderstand me. I was just thinking in a conceptual exercise. Like, it does take a lot of faith to believe that these structures are exactly, not just even the way that they describe it. Maybe it's not like a thing. Maybe they exist exactly like how they describe it. Maybe the problem is not how they describe it. Maybe the problem is how they understand it. Basic trees that living inside of us. I kind of like that idea better. Anyways, I'm sorry.
Can I just go really quick? So it is, again, very, very intriguing, very curious that I was thinking about it just before the space started. I was thinking, I think because I read on Twitter or something, how do they go and check? Like, what's the software that checks for my DNA? Like, I understand there's a machine and it makes the translation, and it becomes literally letters. Like, it becomes the ACTG, whatever, like the adenine, guanine. So it becomes like letters. But then again, how, I was thinking about it, not because, like I said, it's speculative, not because necessarily, oh, it's not real or whatever, but how do they do it? I want to understand as well, because it could be that it's the same as with viruses and bacteria and so on. A lot of times we have preconceptions of things, and then we realized, I mean, we quote unquote, right, like scientists, they'll realize the thing after 100-something years. Oh, it was actually this other thing that if you looked, metaphysicians knew about it since ever. But okay, take your time. But very funny, very funny. Now that you mention, I remember this just before the spaces. I was thinking about it and thinking about would like I be possible to buy one and test my own DNA on the thing, or is it like super big, or how does it work? Anyways,
that's the whole thing. Is like, the truth is, metaphysicians built the reality that, like, where ideas live. Like, they're the ones who put it into formation, whether we agree with them or not. They're accessing that higher Dathic consciousness, which I say that everyone can access if they choose. I think everyone's the agent to do that. And I think that that's what the difference is initially in cosmology and religion was about. I think it's about divisions of like their understanding of the tree was a little different. So they tend to preference a Sephira, or tend to preference a path, or tend to preference a pillar, or tend to preference some conceptual idea, or even the klipas. But it's all mappable back to the tree, and it's all buildable from the tree. First principles and 10th principles, you could say, in a way. So I just think that just be post-conceptual. Just be like, yeah, fuck it. It's real, it's not real. It's kind of sort of secret, third thing, non-dual. I think that's the right way to approach reality. And also, there's a tweet today about taking people in good faith. This is something that Matt and I have discussed like a little bit in the past, just privately. Just like that is really the only way that you can move through the world. Is kind of taking people. You might get hurt. Sure, I've been hurt. 100%. I'm talking online. But you know what? It's part of it. It doesn't mean that we are stupid. It doesn't mean that we go recite our life story or whatever. But maybe we like are discerning and like a big part of the aeonic ideas. But we're also agents of our own free will. So we're not just moving with our emotions, and we're not just moving within logic either. We're kind of in flux between both, and so we have to approach people both where they're at, but also where we're at. And like, if we make a fuck up, maybe we can, try. Maybe we have the chance to rectify it. Maybe not, but hopefully we can. So I think that's a really great aeonic idea, as I've always said, is redemption, rectification. Doesn't mean that you have to be the goody two shoes hero. I think the anti-hero has a bigger part in this aeon or this Leela, but it's not about being the baddie either. It's kind of like that is pragmatism, and it's kind of like, remember we talked about this. The bija for that goddess is Preem, which is the sound of self-respect. Wow, that's such an interesting concept. I've seen several people talking about that, going back to Matt's point. Like, I also saw a tweet about, I don't know if it's the same one, but I also saw about a tweet about DNA. Then I went about my day and was like doing something. And then a few hours ago, I also had this idea of like, what if it isn't what they tell us? Or maybe they're misunderstanding. Maybe this is the whole fucking problem, is that you need the dose of I'm not saying do LSD. I'm a granola, okay? I'm saying stick to the naturals for me. But maybe you do need that hit, that dose of Dathic consciousness. Maybe you don't even use psychoactives. I don't even think you have to. I know Matt doesn't think you have to. Lots of people don't think you have to, because a lot of people have achieved it without. But that's okay. But I'm saying maybe the whole idea, maybe even the story of like how DNA was discovered, it's not actually about LSD. That's a very like outer temple kind of presentation. Maybe the thing is like about like that deeper and secret consciousness, or that layer of like knowledge that you reach up into and draw down unto yourself. I don't think that that's that far-fetched, as like we've discussed so many times. There's like layers and like metafiction and like stories within stories, and like magicians often build their stories like chronopoesis, parafiction, metafiction. Of course, Zach's in the room, so we'll shout out to one of the greatest metaphysicians of all, or at least metafictionalists of all, Tracy Twyman. That was her whole thing. She's a magician. I wouldn't even say she was a researcher. She was a magician number one. And all her work should be read as that, in my opinion. Okay, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Tracy. It's strange because I feel like that's somebody I should have met but never did, and I always like cross paths with her in weird ways like that. It's just, I love her. She does have a mythopoesis of some sort. She's like a legend on the internet. But you mentioned something about the possibility that acid and psilocybin could be useful. And I think one of the reasons why is I shared a post today talking about how it turns off the control center in the center of the brain where the ego resides. And while it's shut down, it's got like a server reboot. Other parts of your brain begin communicating and sparking when they don't normally do that. So it's like when the main relay is turned off, it automatically starts rerouting signals. And so it's probably during that time there when I think it was it Cricks that took acid and then saw the helix, the chiral DNA. It's funny that would come up again. So maybe in some way, shape, or form, it's because some parts of his brain connected that weren't previously connected caused that epiphany to manifest. And so there's other examples of that happening with people, of course. But I think that might be one explanation for it, is like the actual biological effect it has. Psilocybin also turns into psilocin, I think, which mimics serotonin. So if we're talking about amino acids and molecules and stuff, it's basically the same shape to fit in the serotonin slot. So when you're dealing with molecules like that, it's like none of that stuff seems to be quite accidental. So, it's a fun rabbit hole to go down to wonder why that is. And when you mentioned trigrams earlier, when we were talking about the acid and bases of DNA, oh yeah, and one of the stop molecules I think is called uracil. I think it's U is used for that. But the trigrams reminded me of the three mothers of Hebrew, because you have Mem, Shin, and Aleph, which are the three mothers. And so when you said trigrams, I thought, oh, maybe that's like that, because the matrix, where we get that word from, that's a Hebrew word referring to the lexicon or the logos. So it's like all those possible combinations of amino acids is very similar to like all the possible combinations of the letters. So like language as we know it is very similar to chemicals, I guess, in a way. And I think that might be, yeah, I think, oh, I had one more note. And then you mentioned a palm tree earlier. So I kind of relate that palm tree in my head to maybe Yesod, because all those species vary depending on conditions and species and so on and so forth. Typically, what I've read about them in an ecclesiastical way is they were planted outside the temple, I think, in Jerusalem. And I think every month they would sprout a new frond or branch or whatever. So in a way, they functioned as like a calendar or something, because you could kind of count the branches and know roughly what day it was, because they were date palms after all. And so, if they had fruit and stuff on them, then it's like, oh, you knew exactly roughly what day it was, in the season. So I think when we read the Bible, it's talking about the season and stuff like that, and it's using all these parables. It's like there's a sort of twilight language layer, I think, there, to things like that are shared with this logo stuff too. So I don't know. Maybe the chemicals in our DNA that's in us is the word, but expressed in a different way. A very Malthusian way, perhaps. Man, I hope all that made sense. Thanks.
It really does. It's because it's exactly what we always talk about. The word is fucking empty. That's not nothing. That is luminousness and masslessness. That is between the polarities in space, but contained or perhaps reified or contoured by love. So that's what the word is. Whether we say it's like aluminum or zinc or whatever the fuck it is, yeah, they exactly they're little particles. They're the flux of words. Maybe they're not the words themselves. Maybe they're smaller particles, like how there are morphemes and phonemes. Like there are different pieces of language, and it's up to us to sort of reconstruct it. This is a very tantric idea. We've talked about this many times. How you have to reconstruct the language, the ritual grammars of the universe through the practices of both the temple and the carnal ground. So, yeah, of course, that is true. It's like we're always looking to the corpus, the body, which can also be the text, right? But it can also be the text. So we're always looking to the corpus to sort of like reify or prove or demonstrate or throw in a book burning pile, like with the knowledge that it contains. Because we always want to see, like, does this stand up? Does this stand up to time? Time's a great teacher. So if ideas can stand up and sort of like travel through the aeons, those are the most successful ideas. That's also why we were talking about languages. That's also probably part of the reason why Chinese is written in all the directions, all like 4 directions plus the 5, which is you reading it. So that's in your mind. But yes, because it's flexible, can go with any aeon. Right? Because it doesn't matter which way the wheel turns. And the wheel turns is, of course, non dual, turns in your own mind. So you are sort of in control of, like, a lot of your own reactions to things. That's really what the wheel is. That's what the time is. It's like in perception. Okay, we're going, we're moving. We're not going to stay stuck. That doesn't mean don't have connection. In fact, I think it's like Matt was kind of saying this at the beginning. It's like maybe it's actually the increase of our connection because of our recognition that it exists both within our own small units of our quote unquote families or in the greater and wider landscape. And as I've often said, it does have to do with the treaty that we experience with the land, especially if you're from the New World. This land is not yet tamed, no matter what the right-wing LARPer accounts like to tell you. It's too vast to be totally tamed. It took 7 centuries for Tibet to be brought into Buddhism. So for American Dharma, we've only had like 30 years. Like, give a Naga a break. And so I think, like, it's like we're just generating that garden, Joshua. We're just generating that date palm garden. And think about the colors of a date palm in the desert. So you're in the desert, you come across an oasis, so beautiful, most beautiful oasis, because it's the only thing that's not that yellowish color, that's not masticated by the wind and by the heat. It's like a beautiful oasis of what colors? The blue of the water, which is not really blue, but it's clear. And then also the green of the date palm. There, Kabbalah, Hesed. And then, of course, the brown of Malkuth. And Malkuth also has green. It also has yellow, so that could also be very sandy, right? Depends. It depends. But there are different colors, right? Just like there are different views of the 4 worlds. So it all makes sense. But an oasis is like where a lot of Kabbalists did write texts, and it makes sense because it is kind of a microcosm, an oasis for the garden that is the world. Now, we might not experience or even be in perception or knowledge of all the places in the world that appear as a garden. And maybe that is probably the negative sort of element of like living in this global, decentralized pseudo marketplace that is X, is that we become like hyper aware or able to hyper fixate on places that we don't live, that we don't know about, that we've never been, that we are never probably going to. Maybe go there if you want. I'm not saying, I'm not putting any blinds or klipas or skandhas before people. I'm saying go there if you want. But I'm just also saying, like, what is also pragmatic to your reality right now. Don't be too futurist where you're like, I'm going to go here and do this thing. And then you change, as Matt said, like, you change your mind. You might change as a person, and hopefully you do. So like, what is your goal? So I think it's always good. Like, Avi talks a lot about this, like, sort of like being reflexive on yourself and like checking in on like, what is your goal right now? I think that's really important. I know it's a little like not really like our subject that we necessarily like get into heavy, but we've talked about it in a more heavier Kabbalistic way. How Hesed, the water, the wave, it reflects you. So when you first approach, who do you see? Do you like who you see? Not everybody likes who they see. Are you as you appear? Meaning, are you the person that you thought you were? Are you the person that you want to be? Are you the person that you will yourself as? That's Hesed. So, and then the self is really at Binah, Saturn. Like you're not necessarily fixed even, but you're more like, I am who I am, and I'm strong in who I am. I have potency, power, potential in who I am, and I know who I am. Like you're not blinded, you're not obscured or occulted. That's okay. And there's different, as we said, there are different archetypes. So not everyone's going to be a goody two shoes, but that doesn't mean they're the villain. That doesn't make someone a villain. That's very wrong. That's very Kabbalistic. You want to talk about Kabbalah of the timeline? Saying that someone doesn't, like Mike was saying, like what is going on? Why are the trads being like the fun police? Like, fuck that. We're not going backwards. No, I'm serious. I'm serious though, like about like weed and about like mushrooms, and that'll be my final point, and then I'll let Joshua go. Mushrooms are a great technology, a tool, one of many. Do not rely on them like a crutch, but I do think I microdose all the time lately, and not all the time. I take like little like 0.2, like 0.02 grams, like tiny little portions of stems. I'm talking very small. I'll chew it for like 10 minutes, and then that's where it goes. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm like ripped. I'm like all mushrooms, but I find it like it kind of clarifies things. It doesn't take away the need to do sadhana in any capacity, but it can be a useful tool to sort of like clarify your own thinking and your own like appraisal of the world. But again, not a crutch, just as a tool. But I think that there's a reason why the timeline, fucking Brian Johnson, everybody was laughing that he's like a vampire. But you know what? Is he even a real person is my question. But then secondarily, I would say he's actually showing himself to be a lot more human than he used to be. Because I think maybe the comments determine who he becomes. That's kind of an interesting way to think of him, though, because he has shifted into a more humanistic, this more kind of, well, yeah, it's kind of boomer, of course. And like Joe Rogan is like, yeah, psychedelics, man. And all of us millennials are like, yeah. And then the Zoomers are like, this is not even a discussion. So I think it's just like it's very relational to like how we are on the timeline and how we are in the comments to him. So that's just a theory. He's like a golem of all of our collective consciousness, but take of that as you will. Joshua, sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll probably be pretty brief this time. Learned another brain hack this week. So this was some doctor of such and such, I don't know. But anyway, he said that how they would study for their exams, they did a research study on all this with the medical students, and it was proven to work with their research. So the technique was very simple. So after you read text, again, black text on white paper, once you observe the logos, you cover your right eye or close both eyes, and for a moment, for like 20 seconds even is all it really takes, he says. And so he says it will cause your brain to shift to the right hemisphere, and it'll store that information more permanently and more successfully. So whenever you're reading something that you want to remember on purpose, like photographically, try that technique perhaps. And I was curious, asking you, Jen or Matt, or even Mike perhaps, Kabbalistically, what does that maybe represent? Would that relate to Chokmah Ben, the covering of the eye maybe? So I was just curious about that. And then also I would comment on mushrooms only because have a lot of experience with them. I've been foraging my own for years now, and I don't even feel the need to. I mean, I got lots and lots, and I never really feel the need to ever eat them. So I think there's a point at which, when the work they do on you is done, you're not. It doesn't have like a habit forming potential, really. I don't think. A lot of people do abuse them, I think. So there is, of course, that side of things, but I don't use them that way. However, I do enjoy giving them to people that want them or need them. So I think that has been a fun part of it. But I think the end of that journey for me has been, rather than giving them to people, because there's more potential for abuse that way. I think instead I'm going to start taking people with me and having them forage their own, because I think then they get a deeper appreciation for it. Like I pray before I cut every mushroom and kiss it and place it in the bag, so on and so forth. I'm very methodical about how I harvest my mushrooms. But so I kind of see it as like a communion wafer in a sense, and I think it's important that we have those rites of passage with an experience like that, because just shutting down the server and rebooting like that and killing the ego for a moment, it's like visiting another country and coming back. It really changes your perspective in a way that was never really possible before. So and obviously don't want to encourage substance use, abuse, or whatever, but like you said, it is a tool, and if used properly and responsibly, I think there's really nothing to break addiction. I've had friends of mine who were on like really hard drugs, like banging fentanyl and stuff, use mushrooms to break it. So I can attest to people having success with it. I've seen a lot of people use it as a tool, but like you said, it's a crutch, right? So it's not something intended, like you break your leg, you use a crutch till you're healed, then you don't need it any longer. And oftentimes you see Saturn depicted with a crutch because he's got a bum knee. So I think the crutch in general might, there's something there that we could observe. But yeah, like Alan Watts said, I think when you get the message, hang up the phone, right?
So I just want to answer a DM question really quickly. What song am I currently playing? I've actually oscillated between a few. So I'm playing Pink Shiny Ultra Blast, which is a Russian shoegaze band, and they kind of like edge on the heavy core. So Vision, thank you for the question. Great question. Never been asked, so I just thought let's do it now. I can send you a link to my SoundCloud. It's on a playlist that I made for our Aether Gaze or Aether Wave series. And to answer Joshua's question, like absolutely, it depends what eye. It depends which eye you're talking about. But in Tantra, I'll tell you this. There's something interesting. Is the eyes are actually the sun and the moon. They actually have nothing to do with the planets at all. They're actually the sun and the moon are also secretly the eyes of God. Anyways, I just thought I'd throw that in. But of course, in Kabbalah, yes, you could say that Bina Hokmah represent one right and left eye each. So, but also that depends on your view of the tree. Like, which is your orientation? Which do you see as the left and right? Are you coming out? Are you exiting the temple? So think of two pillars, like a lintel, a threshold, a Torii gate, whatever you want to think. As you exit the temple, are you seeing it from the exit, or are you seeing it from the entrance? Are you walking towards it? Walking towards the front or walking towards the back? And this is often a discussion in art history. What is the perspectival relationship of the viewer of the painting or the tanka? Because that's more what I know about in religious art. Like, what position do they occupy? Are they even accounted for? Well, tankas are all about being in relation, being in perception to the art itself. Like, you're looking at it doing sadhana, or you're imagining it in your mind. That's also another way, because you might not even have your eyes open. It's just there to provide the contour of what should be an internal process. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question from my perspective. Obviously, I want Matt to tackle it as well. Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, regarding the eye thing, again, completely agree with Jin. You can connect it with Chokhmah and Binah, and for example, you could say that because of how the brain, again, always comes back to the body, right? So if the right side brain would be Chokhmah, and then the left side brain would be Binah, because again, one is more symbolic, the imagery, the other one is more logical, the order of things. But then they kind of cross when they go into the eyes. The Lucifer sigil, right? They cross, and then so your left eye is going to be connected to the right brain, and then your right eye is going to be connected to the left brain. So you could say that if you close and just see things with your left eye, then you're going to see the image, right? The picture, the imagination of the thing. And if you see it with if you close the left eye and then you see it with the right eye, it would be the opposite. You'd see the written reality, the reasoning of things, the matter, and so on, so on. But like Jin beautifully said, depends on how your circuitry is connected as well. Because if we are left-handed, actually it could be that our stuff is changed. Like our circuitry is mixed up because you're using stuff differently, or again, however you are moving the spheres in your body. Because gotta remember as well that it's already hard for people to understand that there is a tree, and then when they understand, you first need to give them a reference, but then you gotta remember it's not fixed, it's moving. So saying that this part of the body commanded by that sphere doesn't mean that inside of it also you got to remember that there's going to be another tree that may have things change and so on. And that's why you would have someone that has a different vision. Like some person would have maybe a deficient vision or like a better vision, or so. Like the trees inside there are different. They're working differently and produce another result. So that's something to have in mind as well. You got to have the reference, but then see it, test it, how it works out for you.
I totally agree. Good job, Matt Murray. You've done incredible this space. All of you. Proud of you. What to say? Oh, okay. So I had a follow-up for Matt. Not necessarily to him, but just I think it would make a good build on it. I think I'll do a little riffing, as we always have called it in the past. Look, most truth is relative. So what may work for one person may not work for someone else. And that's okay. And so we've always been flexible in the ways that we've approached magic. Obviously, we approach it more from the conceptual, sort of like discursive layer, but because we record it, because we're on an app, because we're live, because we're in consent, because we're making everyone aware that, like, yeah, this is magic, motherfucker. Like, come listen to this space, and this is a Friday night true Gnostic Mass, TRV, Gnostic Mass. So, that is sort of, I think, why I think it's important to speak of these things conceptually, be flexible in it, and have our different perspectives. Because even though we often agree, and we do often agree, like I'm 99% there with like what most of them say, like all of them say, to be honest. I'm just being honest. Like it's not worth it. If you actually are in like good relations, like I'm using a indigenous ontological term, but I'm fond of them. If you're in good relations with people, you're not going to find minutiae. It doesn't matter. It's almost like irrelevant. Like everyone has fucking rough edges. We account for them in ourselves. And even if they annoy you, you think that aren't things that annoy me about people? Of course, I find things annoying about everyone. Not everyone, but most people. So, but I'm not a misanthrope. I try and be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be so fiery, Jen. Maybe I shouldn't be so reactive. But it is also, as Matt was saying, it's also my nature. It is. And I just am, I'm led by the fire a little bit. But you know what? I can temper it in myself. And I also can apologize. And I can also self-own my own behavior. And I'm very self-reflexive. I don't think anyone would not say I'm self-aware in that way. Like when I fuck up, I'll be the first to say. Sometimes I don't recognize it. Sometimes it takes like a Matt to be like, like think of it this way. And I'll be like, oh, okay. Maybe I could have handled that better. Yeah. Or Joshua. And like, his approach to me is always like, I'm just going to be nice to Jin and like, I'll diffuse whatever he's feeling. And that works. It totally works. And it's like, okay, yeah, I didn't have to go crazy here, and here, whatever. But I'm not really that wild. For what I've learned about other podcasters and about other people in content creation, like, yeah, there's a couple waves here and there, but it's nothing crazy. It's nothing crazy. And it certainly is a lot more about the Lodge than anything else for me, like being online. I'm not saying the only reason. Of course, I love Threshold Saints and like all the work that we've been doing. And like, Solar and I interviewed Paul and Greg Peters, and like Matt and I are doing David Rankin on Rejects and David Rankin on our show or my show and whatever. It's all mixed, right? And so, yeah, we're just gonna go with it. We're having fun, and so I think that nothing really has happened that is so crazy. I've never been embroiled in anything crazy, no matter what anyone says, and not that they could say that because there's no like, yeah, I talk shit. Okay, so what? It's Twitter. Use your words. You have a problem with me. You have a problem with anyone. Use your words. That's okay. You can be mad. You can show people you have a little fire, a little Gevra. What's wrong with that? That's part of life. Just don't be like insane about it. Don't go after people that you purportedly care about, and you like. Yeah, sometimes it'll happen accidentally, but you know what? You should try and temper it. You should. I'm even learning that, so I'm not speaking from a place of like, oh, I'm like the. I don't think of myself as a white knight. I've called myself an evil dragon star god many times, reborn to both rectify himself and also bring these crazy aeonic ideas at least together in synthesis, if not notch the arrow or the bow and then let the brothers sort of fly with it, So I don't know. But I think that, yeah, love is the cause of knowledge, and like be agential and be non-dual and be in Diamond Thunder and know that, like, yeah, everyone has infinite capacity. Do they want to believe it? Not always. I don't even always believe it, but I know it to be true. But you still might bullshit yourself. That's the fucking that's that. You want to talk about Mara? That's Mara. You want to talk about Maya? Is where you see yourself and you're like, oh, I love that person so much. Like that's okay. But can you carry that love through space? It's very hard to love yourself, I think, and carry it through time and space because you don't stay fixed. So what you tie your love to really matters. So I say, like, just treat it very empty. That's not nothingness. It's luminousness and masslessness. Yes, we are ending in a minute. But anyways, I want to shout out all the brothers. Mike, our art and finance bro. Thank you so much. Astro bro as well. So 3 titles for you. Thank you so much. Much obliged. You're a great addition and a great member. And we value you. We see you. We're in consensus. Thank you so much. Junior, he's not junior. He's just younger in age, but wise years and experience. Our brother Matt Murrah, who we're so proud of, doing content creation, podcasting, doing the Archaeometer, which is totally his own thing, running his website, which is Kabbalah.com. Check out his thing and his Ko-Fi. If you do have those questions for Matt, maybe it's not a huge thing. But like, it's okay to tip him for his time. Just saying. I appreciate that. So, and of course, Joshua the Branch, veteran podcaster, thank you so much. Appreciate you. You're doing big things as well. I know you're super busy. And last but definitely not least, the brother on the left hand, Solar Exile, who has been on my show quite a few times lately, and he has some writing coming out, a little collabo with our other Logi Moonblade, and so we're really proud of them, and we're hoping that comes out soon. And whatever the brothers want to do, like, we'll always support them, and we'll take care of each other on this carnal ground as best we can. We'll use a leftoid term. We'll hold each other in space the best we can. Yeah, that's okay. Their terms are dumb, but they actually mean something. So maybe we just reappropriate them and we say, like, yeah, none of the libtard bullshit, but we'll actually take of them and make of them, as we always say, for Aeon of the Daughter, take of them and make of something fucking interesting. Okay, so we'll do room shout-outs. Avi, thank you so much. Takini of the Lodge, much obliged. Thank you. Zachary Shumar, of course, my brother, co-host. Vision, a newer mutual, I believe, an astrologist or an astrologer. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Have enjoyed your contributions to the timeline. Trenorist, new mutual for me, but I appreciate all your support on the timeline, and I think it's interesting, and we'll see where it goes. Comp St. Dreyfus, thank you so much. I've seen you in the Rejects chat. Appreciate you. Awesome. Thank you so much for your support of all of us. Myself, Matt, Joshua, of course, in being in the space with Mike and Solar. Thank you. And Ihaye, Asher Ihaye. Yes, John, I could never forget, even though you're so quiet in the chat. But we appreciate you. I always appreciate you. I always appreciate your contributions. And in the comments and in the chat and in your likes, it does mean something. Make sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Of course, this is recorded for YouTube, but it is fucking live on X, the app that is both the 10 and the 11. Right? Transcending time and space. We come together in what? Synthesis, rectification, and consent, perhaps even representing the 3 aeonic keywords of love, life, and will. Very interesting, as some would say, and some other brothers would tease me for saying. And no, not Matt Murrah, not Mike, and not Joshua the Branch. But anyways, thank you guys all. I appreciate you very much. This has been the last, I would say, probably since we started doing the fall series. I even loved doing them in October. I know everyone was really burnt out and exhausted, but they were so fun, honestly. People loved our movie series. We're going to bring back Occult Mediums. Maybe we'll make it like a regular once-a-month thing. I think that would be fun to do a film in our speculative. Nobody does it. Nobody fucking does it because nobody's got the skills. That's the truth. Nobody has the Kabbalah skills to do a whole space on speculative Kabbalah of a film. Because we also take it in different ways. We don't just sit there and go strictly autistic on the Kino. We go more meta. We're going oh, where can we tie in mythologically here? Like you love to do, Joshua. Or I'll be like, oh, this is interesting. The colors are, I love the colors. And Matt's like, oh, the music was banging, and maybe they were thinking of this, and this is the mood, and this is the vibe, and this is the tone. And then Mike will be like, yeah, and the astrology was this and this and this. And this is maybe why they were thinking of this, and they could and they could bring it in a cinematic or a Kino way, and then Solar would be like, this textbook says this thing, and we're all like, oh my fucking god, this is so dense. So, anyways, the whole thing is that we are the only ones who can do the speculative Kabbalah film series, Occult Medium. So that will come back eventually. And I love doing the Friday Night Gnostic Spaces. We do have a book club coming up on Aleister Crowley. I'm not going to say which book, but we do. We have to all be. It has to be at least Solar has to be there because he is the book guy. So it only makes sense to do it on a week that he's there. Not that the rest of us couldn't do it. Of course we could, but I just think the lexical precision king has to also be in perception. So we'll wait till that happens, and everything other than that, don't take any bullshit. That's a good Aeonic keyword as well, or Aeonic concept. I'm sorry, Aeonic concept. Don't take any bullshit, but also be in loving kindness and in good faith. I think those are all good Aeonic ideas. Approach things from a place of like, what can I rectify in myself? What can I synthesize also in myself, but also perhaps outside of me? And then also, what can I create from that interaction? It's not always perfect. Synthesis is not always perfect. Rectification is not always perfect. It's the great work is your life. So, go with your great work and just know that any imperfection, you just have to remake the path, and it's always possible. Well, that's what we're gonna say. Might be hard, might take you many lifetimes. That's okay. What's wrong with that? We have fun out here. Yeah, the world is a chrono ground, but it's also pretty fun. Okay. Good night, Nagas, and make sure you do sadhnas.